I'm going to call to order this regular City Commission meeting of Tuesday, February 17th. I'll please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. As always, we begin by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the territory of the Ottawa and Chippewa peoples who have stewarded this land through the generations. Thank you for your strength and resilience in protecting this land and entrusting us with to uphold our responsibilities to do the same. So we'll get the meeting started here. I just wanted to say today is Mardi Gras, Fat Tuesday, or for Northern Michigan, Punchki Day, or our Polish friends. And it's also the beginning of the Lunar New Year. So if anybody is celebrating today, I hope you are enjoying your festivities. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started, and we'll go ahead and do roll call, please.
Commissioner Anderson?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Ness?
Here.
Commissioner Treadwell?
Here.
Commissioner Funk?
Here.
Commissioner Bomer?
Here.
Commissioner Shaw? Why?
We're all stumbling
I can't
tonight.
talk today. Mayor?
Here. And see, I didn't make you do Shamrow.
Yeah,
Announcements
right.
from the city manager.
Thank you. Good evening. I have some meetings and, or no, not meetings to announce. I'm reverting to old habits. I have a couple of announcements for this week, the week of February 16th, 2026. Of course, under this evening's report section of the agenda is an update from me on the objectives and key results. And I just wanted to share that we've begun, the staff team, the employee team has begun a lot of really exciting work to align around those objectives and key results and develop a work plan for the 6 strategic objectives, and I will be presenting that work plan to the City Commission on March 2nd, which will give us a little bit more time to further refine resources, dream big, and also have some reality mixed in there. And then I just want to reiterate on behalf of the City of Traverse City that we invite community members to join us this Thursday, February 19th from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. at the Opera House for the City Strategy in Motion, a Team Traverse City celebration, which is dedicated to reflecting on the progress made this last year and, importantly, very much looking ahead to what's to come in 2026. That's from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. at the City Opera House. Everyone is invited. We'll have some appetizers, and there is a cash bar available for those who would like to enjoy a beverage. And that's all that I've got. I look forward to seeing all of the commissioners and hopefully a whole lot of members of our community and our employee leadership team at that exciting event. Thank you.
Great, and we'll keep that going with the city clerk announcements, please.
I have meetings scheduled for this week. This is what happens when you have a meeting on Tuesday. We're all out of sorts.
We're all out of sync.
The Riparian Buffer Committee will meet on Wednesday, February 18th at 3:30 in the Commission chambers. The Arts Commission will meet also on Wednesday, the 18th at 3:30 in the committee room. The Local Officers Compensation Commission will meet on Thursday, February 19th at 3 p.m. in the committee room. The Downtown Development Authority will meet Friday, the 20th at 9 a.m. here in the chambers. And the City Commission study session will meet Monday, February 23rd at 6 p.m. at the Senior Center. And the session will not be recorded because this is a continuation of your, what are we calling it? Retreat. Yes. And then just to remind you to speak into the microphones so that the public watching at home and the recording of this meeting is easily heard. So you want to be careful when you're turning your head side to side. Just make sure you're aiming at the front.
Thank you. And with that, we'll continue and have you roll along with the consent calendar, please.
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed therefrom and placed elsewhere on the agenda for individual consideration by the commission. And such requests will be automatically respected. If an item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted in parentheses on the agenda is approved by a single commission action adopting the consent calendar. 1, consideration of approving the minutes of February 2nd, 2026 and February 9th, 2026 meeting of the City Commission. Approval recommended. 2, consideration of clarifying the motion previously adopted to make permanent traffic controller verse 749 to correct the street name, which is a housekeeping matter. Approval recommended. 3, consideration of authorizing a purchase order for a tractor, loader, backhoe, and attachments for use by the cemetery and garage departments, which is a scheduled purchase, and consideration of declaring a 2011 Kubota tractor, loader, backhoe with attachments surplus. Approval recommended. 4, consideration of authorizing a purchase order for a subcompact tractor and attachments for use by the Parking Services Department for parking deck snow clearing, which is a scheduled purchase, and consideration of declaring a 2015 subcompact Kubota tractor with attachment surplus. Approval recommended. 5, consideration of authorizing necessary documents to amend the Comprehensive Opioid Stimulant and Substance Abuse Site-Based Program, COSAP, from the Michigan State Police to provide for an additional grant amount of $102,500 for a total of $585,050 over a 4-year period ending September 30th, 2026. Approval recommended. 6, consideration of authorizing an amendment to the legal services agreement with Kevin Schumacher of Glasson, Reed, McLean, Campbell, and Schumacher for professional legal services associated with oil and gas matters, which would increase the not-to-exceed costs for this year by $5,000, as recommended by the city attorney, as required by the city charter. Approval recommended. 7, consideration of waiving the competitive bidding process and authorizing an agreement to complete the updating of project plans for the drinking water State Revolving Loan Fund and the Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund programs. Approval recommended. 8, consideration of authorizing an amendment to the agreement for consulting services to assist the city with management, administration, coordination, and operation of the food composting pilot project funded by the United States Department of Agriculture, with the cost of the consulting service to be covered by the grant. Approval recommended. 9, consideration of authorizing an amendment to the agreement for food scrap hauling services for the food composting pilot project funded by the United States Department of Agriculture, with the costs of the consulting service to also be covered by the grant. Approval recommended. 10, consideration of introducing an amendment to the Traverse City Code of Ordinances, which amends the composition of the Parks and Rec Commission, introduction and schedule for possible enactment on March 16th, 2026. Recommended. 11, consideration of introducing an amendment to the development regulations for the Grand Traverse Commons to allow for additional sheds at the community garden, as recommended by the Grand Traverse Commons Joint Planning Commission, and consideration of scheduling the ordinance amendment for possible enactment on March 16th, 2026. Number 12, consideration of the enactment of an amendment to the Traverse City Code of Ordinances, which would codify the permit requirements of as-built drawings and testing documentation for public sewer and water mains connection. Enactment recommended. This one referenced an attachment that somehow did not get attached, and it's referencing from the January 20th meeting, and you guys were provided to it. But the public can find that attachment on the January 20th meeting. 13, consideration of adopting the poverty exemption guidelines for purposes of determining local property tax exemptions. Adoption recommended. 14, consideration of accepting the audited financial statements for fiscal year 2024-2025.
Okay, would any commissioner like any of these items pulled? Heather? 6. Okay. And just so the public knows, well, first of all, is there anybody from the public that would like any of these items other than 6 pulled? Seeing none, I'll bring it back. And of course, some people, just to remind the public, and to Sarah's point, some of these are carryovers that needed 5 votes from the meeting where we just had a quorum of 4. So a lot of these have been seen and questioned in the past as well. So I'll take a motion if we have one. Go ahead, Jackie.
I move that we adopt the consent calendar as modified.
Support.
Thank you for that. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. So item number 6, and you had this pulled, Heather?
I did. I asked the city attorney if she could explain why we have this extra funding going to the work that's being done, and she said that she would explain.
Great.
So this is an attorney, a specialized attorney that we have engaged for oil and gas matters, which is a specialty. And just bringing him on board and getting him up to speed on the several leases and agreements that we have on the city's oil wells, which are primarily at Brown Bridge Quiet Area. Took some extra time. He then took the time to come up and meet with the city commission recently, kind of to do an educational piece because it's quite a complicated subject. And additionally, we're, as everyone probably knows, bringing on some additional adjacent property to Brown Bridge Quiet Area, hopefully soon. We're working through the grant process to acquire that right now on behalf of the city. And that also has active oil and gas on that property. And so just all of that together has been some additional time that he needed to spend. I hope and anticipate that in the future that shouldn't be an issue, but he was just getting up to speed, and we're expanding Broadbridge Quiet Area hopefully soon. So that
Great.
was what was
Thank you,
behind
Lauren.
that. Yep.
Great. Other questions, or does somebody want to make a motion? Go ahead.
I'll move that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to execute an amendment to the contract with Glasson, Reed, McLean, and Campbell and Schumacher. I added an extra and in an additional amount not to exceed $5,000 in legal services associated with oil and gas matters. Such contract subject as to its substance by the city manager and its form by the city attorney, with funds available in the city attorney budget.
Support.
All right. Any further comment from the commission on this? Seeing none, any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right, so with that, we'll move on to our old business, and we'll start with the balance fund policy that we brought up at our last study session, and Benjamin, I'll have you kick that off.
Yes, thank you. So of course, as the mayor just referenced at the last study session, we talked about, you talked about the recommendation from the city treasurer and I to suspend the general fund balance policy for this fiscal year. And our recommendation is to, in September, appoint an ad hoc committee consisting of 3 members of the city commission, myself and the city treasurer. That committee's scope, at least at this point in time, the envisioned scope is to develop a plan for the fund balance, make any recommendations regarding potential changes to the fund balance policy, and consider recommendations on the city's underfunded pension liability for our employees other than police and fire. I recommend waiting until September to convene the ad hoc committee for a few reasons. One is we, as has been stated and reported on, our accounting cycles will be more complete by then. Also, very importantly, while we have an excellent employee team, they do have finite capacity, and there are a number of ongoing items underway, including our first ever multi-year budget projection effort, which requires a lot of work. We also have a key member of the treasurer's office who is going on leave, who is important to these types of efforts. And so for that reason and others, I recommend waiting until September to convene the ad hoc committee. And just as a refresher for those who may be tuning into this topic for the first time, we have a policy that requires that the city have no less than 15% or no more than 20% in budgeted general fund expenses in our fund balance. We do exceed that, but we have a number of items that are going to put some financial pressures on the city and will require prioritization. I think it's important to wait to develop that plan until we have more of an idea on our facilities needs, which are significant, including building a new structure for ambulance service. We have had to increase employee compensation significantly to be competitive. As I had mentioned, we have some underfunded pension liability, and we also have objectives and key results that we're going to be working on. So we need to take a look at those things through a strategic lens, and that's why I recommend this action tonight.
Do we have any questions, or would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll
ahead,
get some
Ken.
questions.
Sure.
We talked about the pension liability for the MERS pension, and it was my understanding that we weren't going to wait till September to cut a check. We were going to get to that very soon with some of the excess money in the fund balance, so that would make us whole, and it'd reach that 60% for the funding level.
It is correct that this coming budget has 1.2 million budget, I believe, right, Heidi? This coming fiscal year budget, we're going to.
Is it the 2024 to 25 that we are underfunded at, or are we projecting for the 26 to 27 budget that we will be underfunded?
It's both, and I think the underfunding level is actually worse than on paper right now, because the last actuarial report we have goes through 2024. It doesn't take into account these significant increases that we've needed to provide to employees to be competitive. And so, and also the actuarial assumptions, I would say, are rather optimistic and not necessarily realistic.
Heidi's good.
Just one thing to call out. So in the 25-26 budget, we have an extra $300,000 that was to be contributed. We made that payment on July 1st. So if we wanted to budget additional fund balance out of this year before June 30th, that would take direction of the board and a budget adjustment. which we can definitely do. Otherwise, we can build it into the 26-27 budget.
Which is at this point what we're doing, is building it
Yeah.
into the 26,
That's what the plan
27.
was for
Yeah.
that. Okay, I thought the assumption that I had was that we identified that there was a underfunding now, and we were going to take corrective actions now to bring that up to the 60%. And then with the 26 to 27 budget, we would increase the contribution to the MERS pensions reciprocal towards the pay increases that all those employees got.
Well, just to be clear, the 26, 27 proposed allocation that we intend to propose is what would bring us potentially to the 60% minimum funding level. That's still not adequate. It satisfies the state's requirements, but we should be higher than 60% funding level. And even so, it won't, the funding level isn't calculated using the totality of those wage increases yet. Am I missing anything,
Correct.
Heidi?
Nope, that's
Okay,
correct.
okay.
So we will build a $1.2 million additional contribution over and above our annual required contribution into MERS for the 26-27 budget. And that should get us close to 20%, but there's no guarantees once the.
Close to 60%. Yeah,
Just-
right, right.
Once we get the actuarial, it's always, like I said, it's a year behind, so
Right.
the December 30th.
Jackie, you had, oh, sorry, Ken, did you have another?
I was just going to say, that makes a lot of sense. It makes more sense, and it satisfies my questioning with it. And it's with a pension like that that's re-amortized. I said it right this time.
Better than I can
Every
do.
year, it's okay for it. I feel it's more I'm comfortable with it being at 60% funded because you don't want to overfund that. We re-amortize it every year, so I'm okay with that. And that's why I think it's the state minimum.
And the ad hoc committee will certainly look at that strategy, starting in September on the pension in general.
Okay.
Yep. In-depth discussion.
Jackie?
Quick question, with the ad hoc not being convened until September, when will the appointment process happen?
This motion would have that establishment of that committee on the September 7th regular meeting agenda. And the process would be, unlike ad hoc interview committees where the members are randomly selected by the city clerk, the commission would make nominations to that committee.
Great, thank you.
Like our policy committees tend to, or ad hocs tend to go that way. I had a quick question, kind of piggybacking, actually, Ken sparked it. We hope to, with the budget, get that, like you all said, we'll include this money to make us whole to the 60%. But with these corrections in pay and new hires, et cetera, if we're under that 60%, again, when it's all said and done, you've talked, referenced in the past that we're on a plan by the state, basically, like we're being checked in on this by the state. Is that a process of they give you a couple of years and check in and work with you on that? Or are we on like a ticking ticking clock, and it's hard tonight, till like 2027 or 28 to get everything in line?
So this will be our third year. I expect to get the notice here shortly. And we had been on a progressive, my first year we did 250,000, this year we did 300,000. The intent was 350 and to kind of progressive. So I think us making that 1.2 million will make them very happy. It's not a specific deadline, it's making progress is what the state's watching for.
Great, thank you for that. Do we have any other questions or a motion? Oh, go ahead, Heather.
If no questions, I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
That the city commission, I move that the city commission fund balance policy be suspended for the fiscal year 2026-2027, and that the city clerk calendar formation of an ad hoc committee on the city fund balance and pension liability as outlined in the February 11th, 2026 communication from the city manager for the September 7th, 2026 regular meeting.
Thank you.
Support.
And
Thank
I
you,
have a
Commissioner.
comment.
Sure.
So all of us received an email from former City Commissioner Gary Howe during our last meeting.
For some reason.
You didn't get it?
I didn't get it.
Oh, well, it's very interesting. I'll forward it to you. But I think his question is valid about why haven't those funds already been moved to address the pension deficit or the facility repairs that they were collected to solve? So my comment is I hope that over the next few months that those questions are
Absolutely.
answered,
The
because
treasurer and I have
it's been going
already-
on for a while.
We're going to, absolutely, we've already connected on that briefly, and we're going to in in-depth fashion here. So,
Okay.
yes.
All right, any other questions or comments? Go ahead.
I have a
Lawrence.
comment. Maybe this is just the fiscal conservative in me, but I really do think we should be raising our fund balance above the 20% anyway. I think this is good. It's good policy for us to look at this going forward, as we should be having a healthy savings account, not knowing what federal funding or state funding looks like over the next couple of years. Just look at the state budget and what happened to that, and how many programs were rearranged in a very intense way, where several millions of dollars were lost for different programs. So I would support us in the future looking at maybe not just suspending this policy, but actually reworking the policy where that fund balance is increased. That's just me personally, though.
I agree. I pointed out last time, I think that one of the conversations we had back when we originally did it was, oh, well, if something terrible happens, FEMA will come in, and now we don't even know if that's the case.
Right.
So that's very much a lens to look at it through. Very good point. Any other comments at this time? Seeing none, I'll open it up. Any public comment on this item? Okay. Seeing none, I will bring it back to the commission. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, with that, we will move on to our discussion of two-way traffic on State Street, the hot issue tonight. So I'll let you kick that off, Benjamin.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Shamrow. So, of course, there has been a pilot, if you will, for having State Street between Boardman Avenue and Pine Street is a two-way traffic, and the traffic control order that allows for that is technically expired, but we've, of course, been keeping the commission and the public up to date on that. And so in your packet, the packet that's published online, there's a variety of pros and cons to whether or not to keep State Street two-way or revert it back to one-way traffic. And the employee team didn't reach a consensus. We don't have a traffic engineer on city staff. The DDA retained Progressive AE as the engineer to analyze this pilot project and present professional recommendations on that, because we don't have a traffic engineer on staff, as I just mentioned, and out of the need to provide the city commission with professional advice, our city engineer, Ann Pagano, retained the services of Wade Trim, and Lori Pollock is here tonight, who's a professional engineer and a traffic engineer. And I will say that both Progressive AE and Wade Trim, retained by the city, independently recommend keeping State Street two-way. Mr. Zoul is here to provide about a 10-minute presentation to the commission. Ms. Pollock about 5 minutes. And really what the recommended motion in here is, my advice is for the city commission to follow the advice of professional and qualified traffic engineer retained by the city, to direct me to present traffic control orders to the city commission that would make two-way State Street permanent, and at that time, and to also present a recommendation to the commission on improvements and the pacing of those improvements and how they'd be funded. So the decision tonight, if you will, that if you were to make what I'm recommending, is to have me come back to you with the official traffic control orders and with a funding plan. And so that's really just giving me some direction. This wouldn't be final action, right? So I just wanted to make that perfectly clear. And with that, Mr. Zoul, if you would take it away.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Commissioners, Mayor, City staff. Appreciate the opportunity. I come tonight with a bit of excitement and optimism. We've been having this discussion and living the pilot over the last 3 years. We've learned a lot. I've shared a lot of information over the last few years, looking to hit the highlights and kind of progress through that discussion, and appreciate the opportunity to hear Lori's review as well. So a brief agenda. I'm going to move through this fairly quickly. We've talked about a lot of the information I'm going to show. It's included for completeness, but you've heard it largely before in the past. So we're going to move through fairly quickly. So is two-way the right way? How does this improve Traverse City? We've talked about what it would look like, how to set it up. We studied it beforehand. We collected data. We analyzed it. We measured it. We used a methodology based on case studies. We wanted a data-driven approach. We engaged the public. We had a couple of different alternatives that we evaluated. We included a lot of stakeholder feedback, including city departments, Beta, DDA, elected and appointed officials, and there's also some cost estimating that leads to some of the decisions in this process as well. So we know that back in the 60s, the suburbs were thriving and downtowns were struggling. As a result, the traffic engineering best practices at the time were to make it more convenient, faster to get into and out of downtown. Hence, the reason why many downtown streets were converted from two-way to one-way. So prior to 1967, the sections of State Street, Pine, Front, and Boardman operated as two-way. So almost 60 years ago, they made the conversion to one-way. Again, at that time, it was controversial as well. So through our process, we looked at national best practices. There's been dozens of cities that have converted streets in their downtown back to two-way operation. I outlined some of the benefits and the challenges. We've heard from city staff. We've heard from the public. We know that maintenance operations under one-way operate a little bit differently than they do under two-way, and we understand that. We identified how it operated as a one-way system. We modeled that. We then took that data and modeled it under two-way traffic conditions. Then we collected data, modeled it again, and continued to see that the system, the spoiler of this is, both ways work. We can move traffic, we can move people under both scenarios. So moving towards implementation, we went through several walking audits. We had several rounds of engagement. This was partnered with the Front Street reconstruction process. We looked at two different key design alternatives, one converting all of downtown to two-way, and the other being primarily State, Boardman, and Front being converted to two-way. In November of '22, we made the decision to convert to a one-way, the State, Pine, and Front from a one-way operation to two-way operation on a temporary basis, which was just in time for construction of the Parkway, which impacted how our downtown was operating. So the pilot was extended through 2025, and we continued to collect data. We've learned a lot in this process. We've had some iterations along the way. We've added some signs, we've adjusted some pavement markings, we've bagged some meters, removed some parking spaces, added an all-way stop as a part of this process. And there's still work to do if the decision is to make it permanently two-way traffic. So we had talked about what some of the key project goals are. Again, slowing vehicle traffic, rising to number one, creating a safer, more comfortable environment for all modes, primarily pedestrians and cyclists. We wanted to help enhance the public realm, encourage private development, and provide more connectivity within the grid system. So I bring that into a summary of those goals and metrics. Then we get really into measurements. How did we do? So the data that we were able to collect prior to implementation showed 26 miles per hour as the 85th percentile speed on a one-way street. Through the years, July of 23, 24, and 25, we had seen a meaningful decrease in the 85th percentile speed. We know that speed is related to safety. Your chance as a pedestrian of surviving a crash at 20 miles per hour is much greater than surviving a crash at 30 miles an hour. So every mile per hour matters. We looked at the number of drivers that were operating at or below the speed limit. Prior to the conversion, 78% of vehicles were operating that way. Post-conversion, the most recent data shows that 94% of the people are traveling at 25 miles per hour or slower. Putting that in numbers of vehicles, 900 speeders previously, we're down to approximately 400 speeders today. We also looked at excessive speeding, those traveling 35 miles per hour or greater. Under the one-way operation, our data showed that we had 16 traveling that fast. Our data over the past few years continues to decrease. We're down to 2 from this past year, traveling greater than 35 miles an hour. Crashes. We looked at safety, we looked at crashes. We had 4 crashes of people walking or cycling in 21, 22. That's been down to 2 total crashes over the last 2 years. We've also measured pedestrian activity, so approximately 1,000 before, and then we had seen increasing pedestrian activity with a very high watermark in July of this past year. We also measured on-street parking utilization. The State Street parking utilization has increased by almost 20%, while at the same time, Front Street has only increased by 1%, so that we had a comparison. Obviously, that's impacted by the availability of on-street parking as well. We had also looked at property tax revenue, and we've seen an increase in the value of property tax revenues on State Street. However, even though we've been able to put this number in our presentation, I can't make a direct connection between converting the street to two-way and the growth and the investment on State Street. As a part of the process, the DDA has continued to stay connected with its businesses. They had some survey and found that there was strong support for keeping the conversion to two-way. There's several different slides around the data that they had questioned. And so as a result, the two-way operations improves connectivity for all road users. Traffic volumes along State Street have increased under two-way operations, facilitating more two trips within the downtown area. And thankfully, there are no longer any wrong-way drivers on State Street. So in order to make this happen, there are some next steps that we need to get into. We have the opportunity to make one of these 3 different decisions. We can end the pilot, convert the streets back to one-way operation. That is absolutely something that can happen. Secondly, we could make the conversion permanent and set up the opportunity for additional modifications through your typical capital improvement program. Or we could extend the pilot or expand the pilot, with immediate modifications. So this final decision or the recommendation is going to be sooner, it's better sooner than later to set up for those capital improvement projects in your budgeting process. So looking at the conversions to make it permanent today, there's a couple of changes that are recommended. One of them has already been completed. That eastbound stop sign at Pine and Front has been installed. We're also recommending repaving the Front Pine intersection to remove that sunken island to help remove some of the confusion with that intersection. And then there's the potential to expand the pilot on Front Street. If you're interested, we're estimating that around $100,000 of investment, which could be programmed into your next capital budget. Again, those are the highlights that are shown in the red circles here on the map. And that's my summary.
And on both together or separate
I think
questions?
separate.
Okay. Does anybody have questions for Chris at this time? We also do have one more presentation coming. Yes, Jackie?
Just there has been some commentary and questioning about data validity and whether our sample sizes are significant enough to find this directional information projectable. And I wondered if you had any comments on that. I was noting particularly the low number of crashes, which is great news, but are those numbers big enough to really know anything?
So the crash data is reported based on the actual crashes that are recorded. So that's all of the number of incidences that are available. From a traffic volume standpoint, pedestrian standpoint, and vehicle standpoint, we've collected over 95,000 points of data as a part of our pilot over the few years. And I can say with great confidence that it's statistically significant. The data that we've collected absolutely is not a random impact. The results are true to form.
Great. Would it be possible to see some more analysis, especially on the speeds? I think that's probably where you have a large number of data points, and if we could get a 95% confidence level on the actual ranges, that would be
Absolutely.
helpful. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Ken?
Real quick, there was some conflicting information between the presentation that we just saw and the packet. It was to the Wade Trim memo to the city engineer In the February 5th letter to the city engineer from Wade Trim, on page 2, under public and city engagement, it reports 47% of the people surveyed reported supporting keeping the two-way design. However, on page 10 of the program that we just saw, 47% of the people polled supported keeping the original one-way pattern. So one place it says keep it two-way at 47%. The other place it says keep it one-way at 47%. So I'm not, anybody else pick that out?
The Wade Trim.
So there's a memo to
No,
city
no, yeah, I'm
engineer.
sorry, I'm asking, the Wade Trim memo's a separate study, right?
Yeah, it
Yeah, that we're
wasn't in
about to
that
get the
PowerPoint.
presentation
It's
on.
not a study. It's
Or, no, I'm
it's
sorry.
a memo.
Yeah.
So in the memo, it's about halfway down the page, additional support from study indicates the following. 47% of the people polled supported keeping the existing two-way pattern.
So I believe we have Lori, who's doing the next presentation, coming up to answer that real quick. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Just one moment.
We're looking at the presentation.
Yes, that was from Lori. The memo was from Lori to Ann. It is, if you're at the whole packet, Lance, it's 3 halfway down. It's the first paragraph, public and city engagement. And this is 47% polled supported keeping the existing two-way pattern. But, and then that conflicts with, this slide right here, 47% keeping the existing one-way pattern. So I don't know which one it is.
So which one is it?
Did 47 like two-way or did 47 like one-way?
So the data that's being referenced here was a part of the initial engagement phase prior to implementing the conversion. This is when we were talking about performing the pilot. We had polled the public, and 47% of the people agreed that keeping the existing one-way pattern prior to implementation, again, this is the data before we had done the pilot, believed that the one-way was working.
Okay.
So it was in favor of one way.
Has there been any public engagement or polling after, other
Indeed.
than the business owners? Was there a broader survey to match that 4753 post?
So just the Boardman neighborhood was engaged with some follow-up on the conversion. I think that happened twice.
Okay, thank you.
There's a head nod to the twice for the public.
But nothing more broadly to reflect kind of a pre-implementation, post-implementation?
Correct, not
Okay.
not a community-wide survey.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Do we have other questions about this presentation?
About that one, I guess, no.
Okay, that was a good.
I don't have
That was a
any
good
more.
clarification, thank you. Okay, then we'll go all set, and we'll hand it off to Lori then.
Thank you. Good evening. I don't have a formal presentation, but just wanted to give a quick summary. I'm a professional engineer, traffic engineer as well, licensed in the state of Michigan and been practicing safety and traffic engineering for the past 26 years. And as requested by the city, I conducted an independent review of the progressive analysis and study, and I agree professionally with the findings of the study. It demonstrated positive impacts to safety, showing reduction in crashes, as we were just discussing, positive impacts to operations and business access. Additionally, the safety data and the speed data show, in general and with other studies as well, that two-way streets have slower speeds and an overall better impact and more comfortable environment for pedestrians. And as all of the data that was shown today point to improved conditions with the two-way configuration, there's not really a compelling reason or any severe crashes or anything pointing to reverting back to a one-way operation. Additionally, analysis is recommended, and we agree with that, particularly looking at improvements on Front Street to accommodate keeping the two-way operations on State Street, as well as looking at, as we talked about, parts of Front Street or all of Front Street being converted to two-way. Were there any other questions?
Okay. I don't see any here for this one, but thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Yeah, so I think now we're at the point where we need direction from the city commission on if you want me to return to you with a traffic control order to make two-way State Street permanent, also to present the recommendations on the improvements and how those should be phased in. And so I'm just looking for direction from the commission in the form of that motion, or if there's an alternative that you would like to see, I'd like to hear that too.
Go ahead, Heather.
I personally found the two-way on State Street convenient for getting in and out of downtown without traveling down Front Street. It also seemed like a good way to reduce traffic on the heavily pedestrian blocks of Front Street. However, the input that came in from the employee team, the pros and the cons, so many more cons than pros, I was kind of shocked. There are maintenance issues, says our staff. Maintenance issues, emergency vehicle issues, delivery issues, continued issues with parking and bike lanes, and this huge cost. Also, they noted that no feasibility study had been conducted. It was promised, but it wasn't fulfilled. I also want to point out that this body last year on March 17th established an ad hoc to advocate for pedestrians and cyclists during the pilot extension. The mayor, the pro tem, that was Mark Wilson, and Mitch Treadwell, Commissioner Treadwell, were to serve on that ad hoc. I can find no evidence that this committee ever met. I'd like to know, and the ad hoc may have addressed this, how this plan that we are looking at right now fits in with the proposed mobility action plan's vision of a bike network. That study, which is from 23, I think, shows that there's low cyclist stress on State Street between Boardman and Front. Think about that. And there's also low cyclist stress on the entire length of Front Street. I don't think that's aligning with the current conditions right now. Finally, I am really concerned with the heavy focus. It seems like a bias to me on traffic flow and safety, and also this big push for two-way on Front. I don't see how that belongs here. I'm for returning State Street to one-way. The construction's over with on the parking lot, or on the parkway, or I'm also in favor of tabling this. If we table this, I support getting this in front of the Complete Streets Advisory Board as soon as possible, where they can consider a real, actual, safe east-west corridor for bikers that's not sandwiched between traffic and parked cars. I know that there's some urgency about this. Summers is coming, and the street, as it currently is right now, is not safe for pedestrians. It's not safe for bikers, and at present, it's difficult for emergency services. It's difficult for deliveries, and it's a gigantic, huge frustration for drivers stuck at those intersections.
So just to address the very fair point about the ad hoc, my recollection, and Benjamin, you were clerk and then interim at this point, so you might remember more too, was that there was kind of a, let's establish this, but then the Complete Streets took off, and the idea was that it should go to the Complete Streets.
Was already in operation at that point.
I know it was, and that we were waiting for that this would actually be better evaluated by Complete Streets. So I agree with what you're saying about having this be vetted through that. So that's where that got lost in the mix, and that should have happened. So apologies on that. So just wanted to address that I think I agree with that on the Complete Streets. Lance, and then Jackie.
I have a long-winded question, but it's going to address a lot of things. So I think a lot of our commissioners have probably heard this too. Facebook warriors come out in full force when we talk about State Street being a two-way. And I've heard several complaints about it, mainly focused on just we like it the old way, which I don't think is a great way we should run our city. Just we like it the old way doesn't work. If there's a better way. And I looked a bunch of people up who were commenting, and they don't live in the city of Traverse City. NACTO, or the National Association of City Transportation Officials, actually prioritizes two-way street safety through traffic calming. Because it does traffic calming, it reduces turn speeds, and there are often separated and protected infrastructure that goes with that. public safety is one of our duties as city commissioners. And the data doesn't lie. Slower traffic equals safer streets. It's one of the reasons we established the Complete Streets policy. But I do believe there's more we need to do. And I don't know if this is getting to my question, I don't know if this requires this to be in a pilot to do this more, or if it requires it to be made permanent so that we can then do more. And that involves something like potentially moving parking away from the curb and putting, the bike lane be protected by parking. But also, we need to fix the issue of Cass and unions churning, right? I think that's probably the number one complaint that I've heard is that those left turns just are terrible. And if it's making a left turn lane, cool. If it's just changing the way the signalization works, also cool. Leave that up to our very good professionals on how they can recommend that. But so I guess the question really, Ben, is do we have to enact this or give direction to enact this as a permanent two-way model for you guys to, at the city, to go do those things, like, potentially a little bit more experimentation, or do we leave it as a pilot? How does that work from that standpoint? What are we limiting ourselves with by essentially making it permanent versus piloting?
Sure, and the answer is, and I'll get more specific, but it's sort of semantic. So you can do what you're suggesting, and the way to do it, if the commission wants to, would be technically, it needs to be, the traffic control order needs to be adopted and made permanent.
Okay.
And then the commission in that motion could direct that permanent status of the traffic control order be revisited, and the city commission has total authority to rescind that traffic control order. So it's basically like a continued pilot. You just can't call it that technically. Does that answer your question?
I think so.
I have a quick piggyback on it. If we do make it permanent and with those caveats, as we're looking at potential funding for fixing some of these things that Lance pointed out that definitely need to be fixed, does having it be permanent help us if we are applying for grants or other things as well versus we need money for this pilot program?
Yes, it does, but and I know it's not what you're suggesting, but we also want to be, genuine when we're approaching funders and not pretend it's permanent if it might be reverted.
Well, my thought
relatively
sorry,
soon.
just to clarify, because this is a public meeting, my thought on that was more, we would make it if we made it permanent, the goal would be to fix these things. If we don't get the funding over a period of years, or things
yes.
continue to not operate smoothly, we might want to revisit it, not being disingenuous.
Right,
But fair
absolutely,
point,
yes,
fair
yeah,
point.
thank you.
Jackie,
Yeah.
oh, go ahead, you had another,
I just have a
sorry.
follow-up question, if I could. It revolves more around timeline, right? So from my understanding, what you're asking us is to give you direction, say, make it permanent, but then you're going to then bring us traffic control orders that would actually make it permanent. So like our vote here doesn't do that. It doesn't actually create permanence in this. It just instructs you to bring us those orders.
Yes. As well as a recommendation on making the improvements.
As well as recommendations on making the improvements.
Right.
Okay. And what does the timeline look like for you presenting those TCOs and those recommendations for improvements? I'm saying this because I'm asking this question because in a way that I want also our media to understand that us voting on this today doesn't mean this is permanent and like we made this permanent at the meeting.
Right.
I think
I'd be prepared to, bring something back to you by the first meeting in April.
In April, okay. And so by then, we will have, just so my fellow commissioners are aware, we should have the Complete Streets Advisory Committee in place
Great.
by then. And this is something they could review as well.
Great, good point. Thank you for your patience, Jackie.
And that was going to be one of my comments, is that I would be very supportive of tabling this or referring it at the earliest opportunity to our Complete Streets Advisory Board. I think they are the ones who are empowered and best positioned to examine it from the perspective of all of the users of these streets. And I would put forth a request that we seriously reach out and try to find a way to integrate public transportation into the equation and the considerations, because anything that, in my mind, we can do to reduce vehicle traffic of all kinds is going to improve safety and I would like to see us examining opportunities for that to be enhanced.
I have a question for clarification on that, Jackie. Right now, like the Bay line, which is probably the most frequent Beta line,
It is.
goes down State Street several stops. So when you say that, what are you actually asking about? Sorry, and just to clarify, are you talking about like making
Sure.
sure there's pullouts, or what are you looking for?
And I don't have all of the potential solutions worked out, but one possibility might be a downtown circulator, a shuttle bus that, ran between parking decks and allowed people to park on the fringes of downtown rather than taking vehicles deeper into Front and State. Just one possibility.
That's a fair point, and I'm going to use that as a moment to say, the Bay Line runs through downtown, and this is not at you, this is just to remind people. The Bay Line runs through downtown. You can park at outside lots at Meyer, you can park over by the hospital, you can park over at Acme, and they will take you right into downtown and stop every block throughout downtown on State and Front. And I'm just giving that as a plug for the old Beta line there, because I think people stopped using it a lot during COVID, and it's still a really great way to get through downtown without having to park downtown. And so, anyways.
And I
Thank
just
you
want
for the
to,
refutation.
What's that?
Thank you.
just on Commissioner Anderson's point, if it is the will of the commission to have the Complete Streets Committee make recommendation, it's probably going to be more like middle of May or so by the time something came back, because that committee probably won't be in place until mid-April.
Well, question on that, just to clarify both where Heather and Jackie are coming from. If we did the motion as it was here and Benjamin brought us back something, kind of the preliminary, early April like he's talking about, and then we could send that to be vetted as well by Complete Streets for additional comments and such, would that work to keep the process going, give them something to work on, but not take that out of the hands of the Complete Streets? Would that be in line with also what we're thinking? Okay.
Yeah, I
That
think-
sounds, okay. Just doing that. Okay, go ahead, Laura.
So it's pretty clear from the vast number of communications that we've all received that we have a split community on this. And as the consultant highlighted, both ways work. So really, this decision can't be about feelings and vibes. It's got to be based on credible data that we've received from the traffic engineering report, data analysis from the pilot study, making sure that it's consistent with our policies and plans, including our new strategic action plan and the new Complete Streets policy. I completely agree with that. And with our stated long-term outcomes. We've talked about safety. As Lance said, slower streets make safer streets. Mobility issues for pedestrians and bikers. And as Jackie alluded to, our need for public transportation. And of course, the vitality of our downtown. So where am I landing? I'm kind of sitting with extension of the pilot so that we can address some of these issues. I've heard a lot of optimism about the two-way. I've also heard many unresolved concerns. My inclination is to continue to study this with the improvements, because we really haven't had a controlled variable. Even last summer, we had parkway construction, we've had bridges under construction, we've had the fish pass, and all of those variables have impacted some of the data that we're seeing. So I think having the Complete Streets policy involved with this, or the Complete Streets Advisory Committee involved with this, would be important. And I think we ultimately have to lean on the data that's been presented.
So we don't, go ahead, Mitch, and then Ken.
Yes. From the top, I want to say that I do not have a grudge against this project because I got hit in an unreported crash within the first month of
Should have
operation.
reported it.
But I do have concerns because, yes, we tried it. Yes, we can see the data that says that it achieved some of its goals. Yet we don't have a real control case to compare it to. We had both traffic that was disrupted by construction, and we've had an overall trend of increased use downtown since the pandemic. That it's hard to say that just because parking revenue or foot traffic increased, that it was due to this, and if you had extended back the trend line from 2020 and then compared it to a trend line from 2014 to 2019, I'm not sure that you'd be able to pick out what actually happened here that was different. But I have seen some confusion, maybe not accidents, maybe not people driving in the wrong lane, but in the number of turn operations that are available at Cass and at Union specifically, turning onto and off of State Street, results in much farther car stacking at the stoplights, and it does, because of that car stacking, and people trying to get as close to the curb as possible if they are turning right, even though there is no right lane and left lane to separate them. It does make it harder if you are a cyclist and are approaching the intersection. I'm sometimes pinned with only a foot between a car's wheels and the curb, and I can squeeze through as best I can, but it doesn't feel safe to me. It doesn't feel safe for the car either. Does that actually result in accidents and deaths? No, it hasn't. But it is not an ideal situation. I see a design where we do have one bike lane going eastbound on State Street and one bike lane going westbound on Front Street, in line with traffic circulating that way, as a way that, yes, you might not be able to get your bike right in front of where you want to park, but it can more safely navigate the downtown area. And for the overall purpose of traffic calming, I see the mid-block crosswalks that we have already approved as part of the CIP going in on State Street to mirror the mid-block crosswalks on Front Street to actually be a more significant factor in getting cars to have more eyes out for people walking if they get to the middle of the block and there will be a crosswalk. So during July, there will undoubtedly be somebody that wants to cross, and they will have to go slowly. I am with Commissioner Shaw that it was nice to test it. We got some good data, but I would be fine going back to the way it had been, and do not see an overwhelming case that absolves some of the flaws that have come up.
Ken, did you have comment?
Yeah, Mitch, are you done?
Yeah.
Okay. This was a lot to unpack. This is a big study, and everybody's had their kind of say on what their thoughts were. I'll just read what I put together. As I began to read this packet, on page 2, there was a reference to mid-block crossings, which there are currently not any on State Street. I believe this was referencing the 2 mid-block crossings on East Front. I believe that this was a pretense to what quickly materialized into what was the intended conversation of Front Street being transitioned to two-way traffic, and then presented in the document's recommendations for transferring downtown Front Street into two-way. My original understanding of why State Street was converted to two-way traffic was to provide construction traffic relief for the Parkway and East Front Street reconstruction, which I believe was an appropriate decision and usage at the time being. This seemed very reasonable. Then it was desired to be kept in place to examine the economic impacts of two-way traffic on State Street for a period of time. Then it was extended to provide a longer period of time for further data collection, which, whether that was for data from businesses or as it now appears, it was time to collect and analyze more traffic data. I think it's very important to note that on page 3, which is up on the PowerPoint right now, 78% of businesses did not notice a change in revenue during this project. The conclusions reached on page 4, which I will say that I respectfully disagree with. I give professional recommendations a lot too, and people disagree with them, and that's their right. The evidence that demonstrates positive impacts on traffic operations, safety, and businesses was not an improvement based on what I saw and experienced as a regular daily driver of the downtown area, and is consistent with the feedback that I've received from many residents. Reductions in speeds and accidents can most definitely be attributed to gridlock traffic that is due to intersections that were not designed to support two-way traffic. Wading through multiple light cycles of cars turning left presents situations where street crossing pedestrians were put at risk, increased risk, and contributed to frustrated drivers who could not wait to finally go and accelerate aggressively around corners and through intersections. This isn't statistical data and numbers that can be accounted for in any study. Rather, it had to be felt, lived, and experienced on this day by day for residents of our community and members who drive through our downtown on a regular basis, as well as the pedestrians who frequently travel this piloted area. We only have data on crashes and injuries that did occur during this time. What is not referenced to is near-miss data, and it can't be accounted for, but it shouldn't be ignored. It is not surprising that we're receiving a recommendation for an after study as well as this, for the full-scale traffic analysis that occurred in 2020. Right in tune with that recommendation is the recommendation to require traffic studies on oncoming developments to examine their impacts and potential mitigation efforts. I guess where I'm going with that is anyone surprised that a company that studies and analyzes things would recommend further studying and analysis? If anyone is left with more questions than answers right now, this whole process was successful in creating a situation where we analyze this to death, which historically city commissions have done, on top of what we are presented with, the possible repercussions of not following expert opinions and best practices as mechanisms to force decisions that we feel are against our own better judgment. I recommend the return of State Street to its original one-way traffic flow, which is consistent with its original engineered design and what have been 60 years of safe and efficient traffic flow around the downtown area. Now, despite all that, I will say this. There will be a point in a time where we are faced with the demand and the need to replace downtown water, sewer, and stormwater infrastructure. At that time, it will be apparent the needs to do a curb-to-curb re-engineering that incorporates parking, multimodal transportation, and vehicle lanes. At that point, I do believe that we will have the time for public engagement and advisory committee input and a reimagining of the design of our downtown, but it isn't today. Changing the surface amenities of the roads and traffic flow from its original intended design and engineering is not what I feel is a responsible utilization of our city tax dollars at this point in time.
Thank you,
I
Ken.
hope some of you will join me in moving this back to one-way till the appropriate time.
So thank you for that, Ken. Since everybody else has weighed in, I want to take a moment too, because first of all, something that you said, Ken, the implication was, the intention was to create studies for some other reason. And having been on this and part of this since 2020, which was the first time we went two-way on State Street. 2020 is what sparked the thought. Some of the businesses didn't like it, some of them did, but there was a lot of public support for why don't we close down Front Street all summer long? Why don't we do that? Well, to do that, we'd have to have State Street two-way. So that was part of the impetus for starting the conversation. Part of it was the oncoming construction that was coming up. We'd gone through the 4 bridges already, though, so there'd already been some major disruption that consistently happens downtown. We have a very vital downtown, so I think that happens a lot. So that was the kind of the need for 4-way. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but it wasn't the two-way. That wasn't, though, some thought up pie in the sky that we just should, we've got this traffic thing happening because of construction, and let's just make it a two-way. I will say last summer, everybody's referring that we haven't had a summer without construction. We did have construction last summer, but most of it was so far west of town that really didn't push a lot of traffic onto State Street and Front Street beyond the normal. The summer before was out of control, but last summer was not. I think was probably more online of what we could look at if people want to keep looking at things. But I want to say that when we were faced with this decision last year, it was, well, let's have one more year of a pilot because we had the construction last summer, and the construction this summer shouldn't be that bad. So let's look at it through that lens. And now that's kind of some of the sentiment up here is, well, let's look at it for another year. And this is the will of the body, but I want to point out that this idea that the city commission always looks at studies and doesn't make a decision, this is kind of part of how that happens. And that's okay. My thought is, too, and one thing I've said since 2022, is I wish they had taken data at like 8 or 9 o'clock at night, because traffic at 8 o'clock at night on State Street when it was one-way was not 28 miles an hour. It was 35 or more. And I think people are forgetting how fast traffic moved through downtown, the racing downtown. Like, this is very common, and that's anecdotal, so it doesn't count towards this. But I remember that, having worked nights downtown for many, many years, and watching that happen, and watching people I know who did critical mass on their bikes get pegged and things like that. And so I just, I feel that, to your point though, Ken, maybe this isn't the time to do it. Maybe that is a time where we wait until there's more reconstruction being done. But I also think that we are charged with making future decisions and slowing traffic down, but potentially what, like, the motion was asking for and what Benjamin was potentially asking for is, let's say that we might be interested in, where I would be is, let's say we might be interested in keeping it two-way, but then give staff that opportunity. They're not going to come back with more studies, but they're going to come back with, if we do this and you want to make this permanent, here's the money and here's the timeline that it would look like to do it the way we want to do it. So fixing those issues at the turns, at the intersections. What are we going to do with parking versus bike lanes? All of that stuff that we would have them presented to us with a timeline. And we might say, this is going to take 5 years. We don't want to do that. Put it back to one way. And we're not going to vote to make this permanent. But the other option might be, oh, in 3 years, we could not just have this be a safer, slower two-way. We could have this be the two-way that we really want it to be, that the Safe Streets would want it to be, that they'll have input on it. But I think my concern is that we're getting a little into, again, our own kind of interpretations up here, where we could get a little bit more information to have in hand. I won't say data, because we're not going to do another study, but some of this data that staff could bring forward of what's feasible and what's not feasible. And that would be where my interest would be as we're having these conversations. But that's ultimately up to this whole body, and that's ultimately up to somebody if they want to make the motion or not. Ken, you raise your hand?
I would say,
And then Heather, sorry.
I would say we could talk about that and have staff look at it, but maybe, is this the right time right now?
And that's fair.
We are talking about doing a 3-year budgeting forecast for major infrastructure improvements and looking at some big capital stuff. We're waiving the fund balance, but we're also considering spending money to look at some things and consider it, and spending staff time. We've talked about the finite amount of staff time that we have. I say we don't kick the can tonight. We move this back to one way when this is scheduled to happen under a major infrastructure improvement of the downtown area. That's when we talk about it, and that's when we look at it. But I think for right now, it's really simple. We don't kick the can. We say one way tonight, and then we're done talking about it.
Spent Lance, but first, Heather.
Yeah, I just want to point out that there are other ways. I totally agree that a slower street is a safer street, but there are other ways of slowing street other than making it two-way. And particularly when you have such a narrow street with parking on both sides. Bump outs and crosswalks, highly visible crosswalks work really well. I think we pride ourselves on being a family-friendly downtown. And myself, personally, letting loose my grandchildren downtown, I would feel much more secure having them crossing streets that are one way rather than two-way. It's just dangerous. You've got left-hand turns, right-hand turns when you've got that two-way traffic, and it's so heavily pedestrian downtown. I would feel much safer having those two streets one way.
Lance, go ahead.
Yeah, I absolutely would not support moving this back to one way tonight, just so my fellow commissioners are aware. Ben, I do have a question, though, because we're supposed to be asking questions now. And my question would be, if we just take no action on this, which it kind of sounds like that's the route we're moving towards, what are the ramifications?
I'm actually going to ask Lauren that, if you wouldn't mind, in terms of if the traffic control order just expires, what does that really mean?
Right, so if the traffic, it is expired
Well,
already,
right,
isn't
it
it?
continues to stay
Right.
expired.
Right, so I mean, I think it really comes down to, there's a cost to, I'm assuming, we haven't talked about it, but there's a cost to taking it back to one way. And there's a cost to keeping it the way it is and improving it and making it work better that way. So either way, the commission really needs to decide how they're gonna authorize money to make either option happen. And if that's not done, that really leaves staff at sort of a loss of what to do. And it leaves the city kind of hanging out there with an expired traffic control order. So it's really, it would be the best if the commission can come to some consensus about how you're going to move forward and make those adjustments that need to be made, either to move it back to one-way or to move it forward to two-way.
And Lauren, one thing that's kind of gotten lost as we've all shared kind of where we're at, because though there is a motion in here, we kind of are left with the three options at the end of the presentation. We do have recommendations, though, that this is ultimately a safety issue, too. What's your thoughts, is there any legal thoughts on that, though, too, that we should be thinking about as we're making our decisions?
Ultimately, there is governmental immunity for the commission for decisions that you make. But like I think I've said before, when the traffic engineer gives you a recommendation as an expert, and if you act against that recommendation, then, that's out there in the public. So it's something to consider moving forward if something were to happen in that instance.
So,
Heather, did you have your hand up? No.
so
You can go
I
ahead.
was just going to say really quickly, so we have this kind of idea that it's hanging out there right now. We have a motion that would instruct staff to bring it back to us for possible adoption, but with information on what it would cost, though, to keep it two-way. Benjamin, and I know time is finite for staff, so I ask this very honestly, and I want an earnest answer. Would it be possible if we did that to also bring back at the same time the cost to put it back to one-way?
Yes.
Okay, so we could do that as the motion and amend it to say all the things that it says there, and then at the end say, and information on the cost to turn it back to a one-way.
And the timing, right?
And time.
And the timing for doing so, yes.
There was some information in this report that kind of alluded to costs for turning it into the modifications for two-way traffic. And one of the things that was recommended is the turn lanes at Cass and State and Union and State in regard to the left-hand turn situations, because we have one lane going left, straight, and right. To do that, we are going to have to remove bump outs. And one of the things that we know is we talked about bump outs a lot in this community in regard to why we do that. It decreases the amount of time that somebody's actually crossing the road. It brings the pedestrians out closer to the road so that they are more visible. And it was ultimately for a safety reason as well. So we're going to be reducing the size of our bump outs in order to accommodate this two-way traffic for this. And that's why I get back to my original comment was, when we can re-engineer this road from curb to curb, I am supportive of it going to two-way at that time. But right now, because of the amount of money that's going to cost, it will cost more to take this to two-way than it will be back to one-way. I think that's a pretty easy thing to look at and recommend and say, yeah, it's
I mean,
going
we
to
haven't seen that.
I was going to say,
So,
fair enough, yeah.
If we don't direct staff to do anything, or both of them, we won't see that.
Fair enough.
So, and I don't think, I think our staff is pretty creative in a sense that maybe they don't have to add turn lanes, but we can actually make the turning better. Because I know that there's other possibilities out there that might not be in this presentation. Our staff didn't put this presentation together. They weren't that study. So I think we kind of owe it to them to, at least, I would be okay with adopting something that has both and you bring both to us. Because I do think that can then go to the Complete Streets Advisory Committee. Both of them can, and they can evaluate that against a rubric. And then bring that to the commission and say, hey, here's a recommendation, whether it's my opinion or not. Like, I don't want it to be my opinion. I want it all rooted in data.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's got to be rooted in data, and I guess my question is, would we be looking for the Complete Streets Advisory Committee to make a recommendation, or is this just involving them?
so what we're asking, what I think I'm going to, before we get too far afield, what staff is asking us for and what the motion is asking us for that we can amend to add also the cost and information on doing a one-way is directing staff to spend the time to get that information together.
Yep.
We're putting the cart way ahead of the horse by trying to figure out where Complete Streets comes in and everything else. We need to give them the instruction to spend their finite time finding this information for us so they know that's worth their finite time. Go ahead, Heather.
I just want to remind everybody on page 237 of our packet and 236 of those issues that were brought up by staff, including maintenance, emergency vehicle issues, delivery issues, And they do talk about the cost, between $500,000 and $1 million to implement the two-way. So this is our staff talking, and there are, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I mean, there are just a few handful of pros and a whole column of cons.
But I think we also have to weigh that against the traffic engineer's report.
But but the traffic engineer's report is about traffic and
Which-
flow and safety through the city. It's about getting cars through the city. That's what it's about.
So,
Cars.
real quick, if one of the things in this study referenced one-way traffic and how it reduces crime and it's safer and it's less safe, are we prepared to do something about 7th and 8th Street? Because they're also one-way. That was my thought, is if we're just going to get rid of one-way streets because they're less safe, what's our plan for 7th and 8th Street? Because they are also one-way.
Seventh has been brought up many times and been kiboshed, but it's on the list too to be discussed, correct? Yeah, so that is on the list to be discussed.
So, back to my point is that even though it's more safe as a two-way and it's being maintained as a one-way, it's the same thing with state right now. It doesn't make a difference one way or another. I don't mean to say it like that. If 7th and 8th can stay at one way and we're not worried about the safety conditions there, why is it such a focus of our fear and concern for state?
I'm not going to argue that the one-way is not safe, as safe as a two-way. I think for us to say, I think we always have to be very careful of saying, hey, we've got this thing in front of us that we've made two-way to make it safer, and we're deciding right now if we're going to keep it that way or not, to saying, why should we do this because we're not doing it to other streets at the same time? Because we are, again, like there's finite time for staff, we have finite money and focus. Both of those streets in various points are on plans to be looked at in the next couple of years, so we're not just saying State Street only and to hell with everybody else. We're saying, here's what we're looking at right now, and here's, because of this pilot, what we're working on. We aren't saying that we don't care about 7th Street, and we're not saying that we think that 7th Street inherently should stay. We're not saying we're going to change it either. I don't want people in the neighborhood to think that we're going to come after the one-way, because some people really love the one-way. And so, but by not doing 7th Street at the same time we're looking at State Street, we're not ignoring the questions and the concerns there either. Yes, Heather.
Yeah, would anybody be interested in a motion that says that the city manager be directed to present traffic control orders to the city commission and present a recommendation to the commission on improvements to make permanent a two-way State Street or a one-way State Street?
I think that's a great motion,
I think
Patricia.
that's the motion.
Are you seconding that,
Did you just make a
Lance?
motion?
Are you seconding that, Lance?
Did you make that motion?
I could make that motion.
You just did. I can mark it
did.
down as just making
Yeah,
it.
so moved.
Perfect.
Can
I
we
actually didn't
repeat
make
that
the
motion?
Good, do you
I
want to
asked
make it?
if
Well, but
we
you
would
either
be
make a
interested.
motion for people to vote for or not, or you don't. You don't. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
Yeah.
so
go
this
ahead.
will bring back from staff
Mhm.
recommendations about how do we proceed, basically about cost.
Mm-hmm.
This is really about cost
And
and
timing.
a timeline.
And, yeah, exactly.
One way, returning it to one way, or going forward with the big
Mhm.
two-way project.
When are we going to see this again?
Early
You said
April, you said?
April.
and then
Well-
Complete Streets will see it.
Well, that's a good clarification, I suppose, because my thought would be that the staff would we would put that information together, and then Complete Streets would look at it, and then we bring it to the city commission. I don't see a need to come back to you
Okay.
an extra time unless
Okay.
you feel differently.
Does that work for everybody? Is that in
Does
line
that
with?
need to be with the motion? Does that
Yeah,
need to be
we
included
need
in
to
the
make
motion?
a motion first, and then, so
So Sarah, your look
So-
is where
You want
my
me to say
brain
it
is,
again?
Sarah. Well, yeah, we're trying to clarify too, do we need to put in with complete, to send it to Complete Streets first? Or is that implied as part of the process?
I think it's implied as part of the
Okay.
process,
So
yeah.
I think
Yeah,
you've got
because the
that.
Complete Streets policy says everything has to go to complete.
Okay, so,
A potential friendly amendment, tell me if this works or not, but that would be to, for this summer season, to return it to one-way, and at the same time, turn it over to Complete Streets for a longer-term assessment of the one-way versus two-way, while getting the information regarding costs and timing.
I think that that would probably negate the process of them getting us the finances first.
Okay.
You know, and so I would want to understand what those are.
To Commissioner Shaw, who made the original.
Yeah, I don't want to confuse everyone. I think that if we make a change, it should be, we should make a change. So it's either we're putting it back to one way or we're leaving it at two way, but we don't go back to one way and then decide we're going to go two way. I think that would be more confusing.
Okay. My
I mean,
my
I would have to
inclination-
return to the city commission to return it to one way because it would exceed my spending authority, just to be clear. I don't have the
And it will be
spending
a
authority
traffic
to do
control
that.
order that has to be approved by it.
Right. So just to clarify again for what Commissioner Shaw, what was said was, we're going to direct staff, and including part of this process, it's not in the motion, but would be part of the process, also send to Complete Streets to get information on what it would take to make State Street two-way permanent, including cost and the cost and what it would take to convert it back to being a one-way. Correct? Okay.
And I second
And
that.
is there an implication then that it stays at its current two-way configuration until that process is complete?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Can
So
I
is
get
that-
okay.
So that's the motion. Go ahead, we're on
I
open
can-
discussion
I
now.
can repeat what I said. Would you
Please.
like me to say that the city manager be directed to present traffic control orders to the city commission and to present a recommendation to the commission on improvements to either make State Street, to either make the State Street conversion permanent or to return to one-way. That's pretty awkward, too,
Yeah.
but.
You got that, Sarah?
So,
Working on it.
I'm
Yep.
curious, when is the Complete Streets Committee ad hoc so that we are going to appoint these people to this committee?
The first week of March.
First week of March? When is their organizational meeting? Because they don't even have bylaws yet. They don't have a chair. They don't have any officer positions,
The first week of March
we
is
don't
the
have any of that.
interviews.
interviews.
That's not how, yeah.
that's not how
So
that goes.
then you guys will approve the appointments and then they will meet.
Committees have bylaws.
It's an advisory committee.
It's an advisory committee.
So,
They just get to tell us what they think.
Kind of.
well,
What-
they're guided by the policy.
Right, yes,
Okay.
Yeah.
exactly.
When we designed that policy, there was all the scheduled work that was going to be done on city streets through the year. It was going to go through engineering and all the different master plan reviews and all the staff time. And then they were going to have the Complete Streets Committee look at it through their lens, because we talked about that flow chart and where they fit into this. Is it assumed that they're going to give us an opinion on any kind of road construction process that's going to happen in the city going forward? Everything.
As specified in the policy.
Not just the annual projects that we're looking at?
If it's a street reconstruction, yes.
Okay.
If it's something like a mill and fill, extending the life of a street, their involvement is not automatically triggered.
It is not if it's a mill and
Right,
fill.
right, yeah.
But if it's a reconfigure,
Yeah.
which should definitely be the case with this,
Yes.
I can support that for now.
Okay, so further discussion on this? Go ahead, Mitch.
I'm a little concerned with timeline. Right now, we are, despite the melting snow, in a period when you can't really change anything. But whether we are going back to one-way or continuing with two-way, I want that to be firmly established before May, when traffic really starts picking up and people start falling into their summer driving habits. And we do have a couple months, but is that enough time for committees and everything else to meet and to weigh in?
I think they've been thinking about it already. The potential members of this advisory board, of which there are quite a few, have been thinking about this. So, yeah, I hope they can get it together and that we can have something done by June.
Go ahead, Ken.
I want to bring back up the 7th and 8th Street. I use that to emphasize my point. We use this risk to the public. I mean, yes, is it very serious to take that into consideration? Absolutely. but I don't think we should use it as a tool to bend opinion every time that we want to make a controversial decision, because there are dangerous things that happen against best practices and professional recommendations on a regular basis around the city. We don't have to talk about what they are, but just trust me, they happen. And I don't think that it's fair to us to get that tool used against us as leverage to make a decision. Like, so just saying that going forward.
And I'm not being defensive, I
Yeah.
just want to just have the understanding that in this case, you do have a recommendation from traffic engineers. In the case of 7th Street, you don't.
Yeah.
And the reason you have it for State Street is there was this pilot project that was implemented, and we haven't done that with 7th Street. So when you have information,
It's good.
it is different than not having it.
Right.
Correct.
And I guess I would say, to that end, when we're looking at stuff that has legal implications, that is part of our due diligence and duty to the city as the corporation of the city and the citizens. And so there are probably things out there, and if they get brought before us, we would be forced to look at them and make those changes too. So I think I would say the opposite of, instead of us saying, well, it's already like that, let's not worry about it, let us know and
Fair.
let's make it better.
Fair.
So, other comments? Go ahead, Jackie.
Just to say that this feels a lot circular, that staff has gathered outside information, has come to us for direction on whether to let the traffic control for two-way lapse or let it continue. And I think we're turning that around and saying, well, we want staff to come back to us with a recommendation. I feel that we have enough feedback, not only from staff, but also from the community at this point, to allow the two-way state traffic control order to lapse, to turn it over to the newly formed Complete Streets Advisory Board for a fuller and broader treatment. And so I am supportive of Commissioner Funk's original idea to let it lapse. I can, in the interest of consensus, I can support Commissioner Shaw's proposal, but it feels as though we are going in circles here a bit.
Any other comments at this time? Any public comment at this time, please?
Harry Burkholder, Executive Director of the DDA. I just want to clarify that certainly we did look at vehicle circulation as part of this effort, but also pedestrian safety and reducing speed. So I want to make sure that that is on equal par with vehicle movement throughout the downtown. I would note also that we do have several two-way streets within downtown, Park, Cass, and Union, that function just fine. So we are used to dealing with maintenance issues and plowing issues on two-way traffic throughout the downtown. So this isn't new or challenging. It's actually been something that we've worked with the city to address over the last couple of years. And I would just like some clarification if it goes to the Complete Streets Committee. I think Commissioner Anderson is correct. Are they deciding on the pilot, or are they deciding on taking State Street down a different direction with a whole new design? Because that's my impression of that committee. To me, the decision on two-way traffic versus a decision on redoing the street are two different things. So I'm looking for some clarity, because I'm going to have to report this back to our DDA board for kind of next steps and those funding implications.
I think the Complete Streets Ad Hoc Committee would be advising the city manager and the city commission and looking at whether or not it should stay two-way or go back to one-way. But that is advice, and ultimately the decision, and I know you know this, but decision of the city commission. But I think what I'm hearing is both options are on the table.
Do we have any other public comment at this time? Please feel free.
I'm going to
And
read
you
the
can
rules.
line up it.
We ask that you state your name and address, indicate if you're a city resident, non-city resident, and/or city business owner. We have a 3-minute time allotment per speaker. When your time has elapsed, the timer will beep, and finally, we request that all language be respectful.
Justin Reed, 630 Kaiser Drive, Permit 1B, Traverse City, Michigan. I'm a resident. Either way, one way or two way, the traffic signals downtown are going to have to be upgraded. They're pretty much, old and any kind of configuration would have to cost. I saw the diagram for the recommendations, being the bump outs downtown, and also with some parking spaces actually going away, with the turning configurations off from Cass and State. So instead of if you're going towards Union on State, coming off from Park, there's no left or right turn lane. There would have to be a bump out to be gone, and also there'd be some parking spaces that would have to go away. So with any kind of new configurations, there would have to be some major considerations of parking being lost, and also redoing some of the bus stops that are along State Street, with the example on Park and State where there's a bump out, and that diagram shows that bump out being removed, and or the other alternative is to go ahead and leave the bump out, but take away a couple parking spaces on State Street. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Please feel free to approach the podium and line up if you have comments.
Frank Deturi, Director of Public Services. There was a mention earlier about maintenance downtown. I just want to let you know that this winter, it's been a real winter in Traverse City, and I've really had no maintenance concerns with operations with our contractor and with our maintenance operations with the two-way streets as they are.
Thank you.
Hi, Noah Roth, 309 West Front Street. I am a resident, and I use State Street every single day, and I definitely support keeping it two-way, just for convenience sake, but also just because I think it provides us with a much better baseline for wanting to do a lot of these improvements, because I do see, like many of the issues that you've pointed out, I don't think that it's perfect in its current configuration at all, but I don't see why we would go back to something that we've now seen improvements on. They might not be every single improvement we've wanted to see, but I think it's going to be a much more logical step to go from a better baseline than trying to revert back and forth, which I also do not support, trying to go back and forth, especially if this is something that's going to be decided on, with a full reconstruction at some point, to go back to a two-way. I don't see why we would go back, from what was a one-way to now a two-way, back to a one-way, into a final reconstruction of two-way. So, thank you.
My name is Miriam Thompson, and I live on 6th Street, and so I am a city resident. And I just recently heard that this meeting was happening today, so I'm trying to get my thoughts together, looking things up online, et cetera, and looking at something that was posted by 9 and 10 News on 2/13 of 26. And so I did not have a chance to read the complete study that was in online, but I just wonder with the study, is this involving like other small towns? We're talking about basically 4 blocks for Front Street, and when they talk about changing State Street, I think eventually then we're going to try to change Front Street. It's the follow-up that will happen. And I have to agree with Ms. Shaw that definitely, to me, it seems safer to cross Front Street with all traffic coming one way. And I think that being a tourist town, this must be really confusing for people that come up once in a while or maybe even every year, and all this back and forth. So, I think, because I go to get my mail at the post office, I think that it's a real hassle when I get onto, do they call that Pine at that point? I can be backed up in the summer to Front Street to wait to get around because somebody wants to make a left-hand turn onto Union. I don't think it's convenient. I don't think it's smart. And, the gentleman that was speaking about riding his bike, Mr. Treadwell, yeah, it's dangerous when you're trying to navigate those intersections and people are waiting to get going because they've been waiting so long. So, and the study is also right after COVID. So, yeah, it's everything is what we're looking at is after COVID. And, I just know that if we keep State Street two-way, the next step is to change Front Street. And I think also, not that it's important to most people, but I think that's what makes our city really special. And we're only talking about 4 blocks, that people might have to go around. And I don't know how many other cities they were evaluating and how long those streets were. So that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back. Any final comments from commissioners? Go ahead, Heather.
I do. I want to address Jackie's point about the circular, here we go, back to staff, back to the commission, back to staff. The only thing is that we've added complete streets. And that's a big deal. And I know that that's a lot of pressure on complete streets, but I think they can take it.
I agree, complete streets, and I think it'll be good for us to have numbers. That's a big, we can guess at how much things would be, but we're going to see some more penciled out and what's worth it and what's not.
You want to go?
I just have a quick question. Who seconded the motion?
It was
Thanks, Lance.
We have talked about unelected bodies making decisions for the community before. We've talked about that. People being left with large-scale decisions that have long-lasting implications. We've talked about those unelected people making those decisions. In their first meeting in existence, that's completely unfair to do that to the Complete Streets Committee.
They're not going to be the final say, though. It still comes back to us. It's just their recommendations.
We just said that their recommendation is going to hold a lot of weight, so I mean, it obviously put a lot of pressure on them. So a recommendation is fair, but let the public know that we'll make this decision.
Yes.
And that the Complete Streets is a recommendation.
Yes, that is a very
Which
good
we may
point.
or may not follow.
And that's how the policy's written.
That's
They're
good.
They're not even recommending anything to us.
It doesn't
They're
even
re-
exist yet.
Right.
No, the policy does.
The policy exists, right. They're recommending things to the city manager, who recommends things to us. They don't even communicate to the board. And they have to do it based on how the policy is written. So it's in stone, right? But I agree, it is a lot of pressure.
But on top of that, I think in addition to involving the Complete Streets Advisory Committee, as Amy said, we've requested additional information. And I think knowing those specifics in terms of costs and the difference between restoring it to a one-way, how much will that cost, or keeping it as a two-way, how much will that cost, that's just a responsible use of taxpayer dollars. I mean, I think we don't have that information in front of us, and we can all acknowledge that, one, the community is split. There's no consensus among staff. There's no consensus within the community. The consultant said both ways work, and so here we are. We have to make a decision, and in order to do that, we need some additional information, both advisory from Complete Streets, because that's new since this process unfolded, and 2 is an understanding of the costs.
So again, just to remind everybody that we are voting for staff to continue and gather this information. This is not a final vote. So, I mean, it's a final vote on that, but not going to make the decision.
Can we establish when the final decision will be?
It's not in the motion, but rough ballpark, when do you think that'll be brought to us?
I think that it seems to me that the Complete Streets Committee will first be convening in April, most likely, and they may need a couple of meetings, and I think that it'll probably be sometime in early June would be my guess.
We can't mandate when we make that decision.
Right. Could be brought to us in May, and we could have 2 more meetings where we ask for more information. There's no guarantee. So.
Unless we are putting it on a specific agenda,
But then even then, the decision isn't guaranteed. I've seen that happen many times. So, all right, I'm going to call the question.
I just want to mention, the recommendations will ultimately come to you, and I'm estimating that would be sometime around June. But if, depending on what you decide, that all has to be engineered. So there might not be any real changes on the ground until next year. And I just want to be clear on that, just so everyone's expectations are respectfully realistic.
Yeah, Heather.
And that would be true even if we were to vote and say, let's go forward with the two-way right now, because
Right. True.
you're not going to get anything done.
Right.
yeah.
Right.
So,
That's a good point.
all right, I'll call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Roll call, please.
Anderson,
Yes.
Shaw,
Yes?
Treadwell,
No.
Funk,
Yes.
Bomer,
Yes.
Ness,
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes. Motion passes. Thank you all for your input tonight and the very good discussion that will continue with the complete streets, which is great to hear from. Okay, so now we'll move on to the West End parking RFP. Go ahead, Benjamin, you can kick this off.
Yes, as indicated in your packet, I engaged the services of Mission North, owned by Rob Bacigalupi, to assist the city in developing a request for proposals or a request for qualifications, and ultimately to assist us in the evaluation of the proposals that are received. And so Mr. Bacigalupi convened discussions with our design team, particularly on February 3rd, where there were different options and items to consider that will require direction from the commission. Mr. Bacigalupi is here to walk you through a fairly brief presentation that was included in your packet, and he has, I believe, 3 questions that he needs feedback from the commission on to develop the RFP or RFQ, and I anticipate that that could come back to the City Commission for approval to be issued at your March 16th meeting. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Bacigalupi. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you, Commission, for the opportunity to help with this project. As the city manager indicated, we talked with design team about this. We've got a lot of good details and had some questions come up. Some of those questions we're going to continue to work on kind of internally, but we did feel that it was important to check in with the City Commission first before we came back to you with an actual draft, so that we could assure that your goals are reflected in a draft RFP. So with that, just a reminder, hopefully folks at home can see a little bit of that, but this is a map of the 6 parcels. You can see that 4 of them front on State, 130, going backwards down to 120, and then there are 2 that are off Pine. So those are the 6 parcels that are in question. And sure I hit all the points here. Okay, so a little kind of background in terms of the history of this whole process. These properties were purchased over time using parking funds. They were purchased for public parking. That was the intention. The DDA, who at that time was in control or managed the parking system, they had engaged Fishbeck, a team led by Fishbeck, to design a mixed-use building that contained 534 parking spaces and I believe 30 some odd residential units. The DDA then decided to shelve that plan, and then after that point, parking management was transferred over to the city. So just a little kind of overview of the history of what's been going on with those properties. In thinking about this discussion tonight, I think before we talk about goals, I think I probably should just go to these 2 processes first and just talk a little bit about them, and then maybe we can go back and talk about goals. They're obviously very similar in terms of the timing. They are designed to be relatively quick because there are opportunities that are kind of at play right now, one of which is a DDA, is actually a state grant the DDA holds for site assessment, and John Jackson from Otwell Mobby is here. he can answer any specific questions that they come up regarding that grant. So that's at play. There's a ticking time clock on that grant. The grant's been used partially so far, kind of with originally with the intention of this mixed-use building that I mentioned earlier. There certainly are options to potentially amend that grant or transfer it to another property. So there are options that John could go into if you have questions about that. So that's one kind of opportunity. The other one is the fact that there are a number of projects on the west side of downtown Traverse City that are kind of looking for parking or they need parking. And so there is this opportunity right now to kind of lead that process and provide some answers to where the parking is, as opposed to kind of leaving it up to individual developments where they might end up kind of piecemealing parking together, which may be fine, but it could end up with more parking decks than we had originally kind of envisioned on the west side of town. So in terms of these two proposals, there's one is a request for qualifications, and the other one is a request for proposal. And like I said, they're very similar. And there certainly are other options that are available to the city, but these are kind of the two that kind of came to the top in my mind. One is where you have a clearly defined project. You might say that we simply want a developer to come in and build what the DDA had designed, which was a mixed-use building with public parking and some amount of housing, potentially workforce housing, to serve folks who work downtown. And I believe, I haven't talked to John Sox, but that kind of feels like what he did, is he sort of put a development together that looks a lot like the Fishbeck design. But if you go the request for qualifications route, you're going to dictate most of the details, and you're really looking for a developer team that is most qualified to build what you want them to build. So that's one option. And the other option, which again is very similar, is to be a little more open, leave possibilities more open, and instead just do a qualifications-based, so you're still looking at qualifications, based request for proposals, where you're asking folks to propose something on those properties, and there might be some variation, and you might end up potentially with maybe high-end housing instead, maybe less parking, that sort of thing. So those are kind of the two sort of directions I thought you might go into, and again, there are others, but those are the two that came to the top in my mind. So with that in mind, there really are just some fundamental questions that we'd like a little guidance on. One is, is the goal to provide public parking? Do we want to say, yes, we definitely want whatever happens on this property to include public parking? We could even go so far as to say, close to what was designed by the DDA. So that's one question. The second question is, do we want to insist that there be housing, and do we want to put some parameters around what that housing is? And again, the details, we can kind of work out at the design team level and come back to you to flesh those out at a future meeting. But we're really looking for just kind of some guidance on those two issues. And then, of course, the third question is, are there any other goals that we're hoping to tackle with this project? So with that,
I have a quick question for staff, and it might be in the packet. I apologize. I've got a splitting headache, and I can't keep that.
Oh, no.
Do we need to make anything whole from these properties, or are we essentially net neutral right now to give us this open field before we start having this general conversation? Or in theory, is there like $1 million out there that we need to really get our hands on, or is there some other amount that we legally have to get our hands on or will be obliged to.
That was not in the packet, but I'll ask the city attorney to respond to that.
So that is something I talked to the city treasurer about, and she isn't here.
Yeah, she's-
But we talked about whether, these were all purchased with parking funds, and this property was assembled out of the parking fund, which is an enterprise fund. And so she indicated that there's strictly under GASB, under the accounting standards that we have to follow for governmental accounting. It's not strictly required that those funds would be returned to the parking fund, but that would be her strong recommendation, to make the parking fund whole and not take a loss in that fund for purposes of doing a project like this.
So what's that dollar amount approximately then, if we're supposed to keep that in mind?
I'm reaching in the cobwebs, but I think it's somewhere around $7 million.
Yes.
Okay. So, but we don't have to.
It's not legally required,
Okay.
but that is what Ms. Sheppy would strongly recommend. That's
So
what she told me.
I put that out there to everyone of, we don't legally have to, but there's a certain obligation out there that's hanging that we would want to consider as we do this. So I say that as we talk about things like workforce and attainable housing and bids that we might want to see. So with that, open up the discussion though and ask whatever questions or let Rob know whatever you're thinking. Go ahead, Heather, and then Mitch.
I like the city design better, no, wait, the city goals better. I think that looks like governance to me, and it's not picking a developer, it's picking a kind of public outcome. I think that the city design one is too narrow, and it's really just built around one proposer. For the goals here, number one, yes. Number two, yes. And the third one is integrating the downtown into the fabric of the rest of our neighborhoods. Adding that workforce housing, I feel will integrate the downtown into the fabric of our neighborhoods. There are only 100 people that live downtown, and they're probably not there right now. They are in Florida. So having that all-season, full-time workforce housing will make a big difference on how the rest of the neighborhoods interact with the downtown, I feel.
Okay, Mitch, you're next.
Yes, well, first off, I'm curious where Commissioner Shaw gets the number of 100, because according to U.S. Census data, I can count 260
I got
in the
it from-
downtown.
Amy Shamrow has said it many, many times at.
It was the TIF 90, it was for the TIF 97, yes, there's 100 people. But the overall downtown, if you're going beyond the TIF borders.
No,
there's
this
a
is
few
within the
others.
TIF borders. I go census block by census block by census block, add them all up, and I get 260.
Oh.
Ooh.
Are they?
I'm not saying it's a huge difference.
Are they homesteaded?
I don't know, and
That's
that's
the- okay.
for census versus tax purposes, and does make a difference. And for voting. But I see for the goals, the inclusion of public parking as a critical aspect of this, since that was the original vision here, and if we are getting something here, there is an undeniable need for parking to be in the west end of downtown, and if we have the land that was specifically acquired to provide parking, then that needs to be part of it. I do see housing, especially workforce housing, as part of our vision for downtown and a need for our community. Is there a way for us to allow for that isn't part of these 6 properties? Say if a developer has an idea that would allow other vacant, underutilized, or surface parking properties in the downtown, particularly the west end of the downtown, to then be redeveloped in a way that does provide housing.
That can be, just to clarify, are you kind of saying like, let's say, because this was a big piece of property that just became available, somebody bought like the Record Eagle building and wanted to use their parking, create parking there, but as part of a bigger development that might include these parcels, you would want that to be noted and considered as part of the bid?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I was just clarifying that's where
And
you're
I'm
going.
just wondering if we can have a scope in achieving these goals that is broader than just these 6 parcels that are part of the city parking fund.
Go ahead, Heather.
I believe that Mr. Sachs is including like that new hotel that's going in on the other side of Front Street as part of his parking plan, and then there's the bank or whatever that thing is on the corner. They're part of the, so it is pretty, I mean, the plan that was originally proposed by Mr. Sachs does take in a lot more than.
I see
So-
what you're saying, though. Is there a trade-off, though?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, so that we'd want to include, or consider that as part of the RFP process.
Yeah, like an
RFQ flash.
incentive to.
Yes. Jackie and then Laura.
I am likewise supportive of the RFP versus the RFQ. In terms of defining the city goals, I think that we need to hew to our strategic plan, and that that incorporates things like mainstreaming downtown as another neighborhood of the city. I think it includes workforce housing. I think it includes parking. I also think we need to be sensitive to the issue of year-round housing, that we look to create a neighborhood of downtown that thrives year-round, not just seasonally, and that we re-examine our policies downtown for short-term rentals in connection with that.
Laura?
Yeah, likewise, I lean more towards the RFP. I think it gives us more flexibility in terms of the goals. Do the goals include public parking? I mean, I think absolutely they need to include public parking. And what I like about this approach, the RFP approach, and looking at those properties is that it's much more proactive and intentional. And so we're not really looking at this kind of piecemeal approach of individual developers just picking a spot and doing a small parking lot or a parking ramp, and then we have a whole bunch of them. So I really like that. In terms of workforce and attainable housing, I mean, that fits right in with our strategic action plan. The refocusing of downtown as a key neighborhood within the local community fabric. I think that's essential, and that OKR includes working with the DDA to reframe the approach for supporting businesses and infrastructure and helping encourage a live and work environment. So agree with what's been said in terms of that year-round focus. I don't know if there's a way within this to just outright restrict short-term rentals within this development of this property, because I view that as counter to what those goals are. So that would be a question.
That is an option.
Okay,
Yes.
and I would like to discuss that option. I think that makes a lot of sense for where we're at in terms of the OKRs and what we're trying to accomplish. Are there other city goals? Should we discuss public bathrooms? I mean, that's been something that has been discussed and was included in Mr. Sachs' proposal, and that's something I think is needed downtown, public bathrooms.
So the question I think I would put, and this is just for clarification for the RFP, if we were to do one, is right now the DDA has a twofold, right? We have some that the city manages, and then we have some that the business themselves, that's one of the businesses in there, offer up their bathroom to the public,
Right.
and then they get compensated with toilet paper and other necessities. So I think that would be either we'd say public restrooms and to be negotiated, or that would just be something that we'd say one of the tenants has to include a public accessible restroom as part of it.
However it happens. I mean,
Yes.
I think that would all be negotiable based on, what we get in terms of responses. But if we're outlining in the goals that access to restrooms on that west end of downtown would be desirable.
That's good. I just didn't want to make sure we weren't totally
Yeah,
just going for
I
like radio
understand.
center.
I don't know where it'll land in the end, but
It can be open.
I'd like to see that.
Yep, great. And then I saw a lot of head nodding really quick because it's come up and I'm kind of just tallying as we talk. Was there a lot of consensus that we would want to ban short-term rentals in whatever happens with this?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Completely, so no short-term rental units.
Would be allowed on the property. Yep, okay.
And this is in reference to the housing element that would be built with this. So this housing element this is facing straight State Street. That we're not talking about the north side of the alley development whatsoever at all.
Nope, that's
Okay.
private property, yep.
Right.
Other thoughts? Go ahead, Heather.
Yeah, I also think we need to be thinking about, I think that we need a ground lease structure, so the city retains ownership of this property, while leveraging the capital wherever it comes in. I think that preserves a certain flexibility for future generations, because I think this is all about future generations. This is a generational decision, and those properties are worth about $7.6 million, I think, and this is a long-term strategic asset. You know, this is a big chunk, like Pro Tem Ness is talking about. This is really a huge opportunity to make something coherent down there. But I think we need to, you know, proceed very deliberately and very transparently with a clear criteria of how we're going forward. And the problem with the parking deck fund reimbursement is a big red problem, and we need to figure out how we're going to handle that too. I would like the RFP to go out and live in the wild while we're figuring all this stuff out, because we don't have that much time. But those are the things that I want: retaining ownership and parking fund, and those two things.
Really quick, I saw, I think Ken and Lance, so
Go ahead,
just one
Lance.
second. Is like that something that, I'm just looking at our attorney, that you'd be able to work out with Rob before we put the RFP of what kind of language that would be if we did want to return?
Well, I think that it's two separate things. So if the consensus is to retain ownership, then there's no need to recoup the $7 million, because the city retains ownership.
Right.
If the request is to basically, give the property to a developer for $1, which is something that comes up, not just with this property, but with others sometimes, then that's the issue of, of the $7 million. Or if the property is outright sold for a development, then that money would be ideally, according to the treasurer, returned to the parking fund and not like the general fund or somewhere else.
Really quick
Does
question.
that make sense?
Yes, but really
Like
quick
those
question.
three
and I'm sorry,
different things.
But then a follow-up or clarification on that then. If we retain the land, what does that do for the taxable value?
Well, we're going to have to look closely at how that would be structured
Okay.
to understand that.
Because that's what I'd be curious about. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Lance.
and the original proposal that Mr. Sachs made to me like over a year ago, it was a lease. It was
Right.
like a long-term lease. And so that still, we still maintain ownership, and we would not be required to pay back.
Right, so the question, I think, is, for purposes of the RFP, is whether the city commission wants to specify that in the RFP or leave it open and let people propose different structures themselves.
I'd love to leave it open.
Yeah.
Because I think it gives us more flexibility, and we can really look at the possibilities of what's out there.
I think the leaving open makes some sense because everybody's got different ideas, but keeping in mind that we have that $7 million
$7
hanging out.
million.
So Ken and then Lance.
I support the RFP, and I just kind of want to, because I think it leaves it open for, more opportunities for people to look at it. But I wrote down just a list of things, of my thoughts on this, and things that I wanted to see. As many income-based housing units on the residential portion of the parking garage structure development. The longer the length of time for the income basis, the better, because there was discussion of the pilot on those. I think with North Shore's initial presentation, they offered a AMI pilot period of time. They said, we'll make these income-based for a period of time as part of their initial proposal. So I think the longer that length of time is on those 80 to 120 AMI, the better, for me anyway.
Don't we want to go on 80 and below?
Well, let's, hold on, let's.
I agree that, but I'm just consistent with what that was original presentation, because I do, obviously this is going out into, we talked about to everybody, but this was initially presented by North Shore. I mean, we wouldn't even be talking about doing something there right now if it wasn't for them. So just in respect to that, I will say that the 80 to 120 is better than nothing. I'll take it. If we're cutting a deal, let's talk about the units. And this could be a nugget. We have to talk, I think it's an opportunity. If we're going to cut a deal, let's talk about the units on the front street side of this development on the north side of the alley. If we need $7 million for the property on State Street, North Shore wants to pay $1. the closer we could get to having those units on the corner of Front and Pine as not available for short-term rentals or deed restricted against short-term rentals, the less important it is for me to get all that $7 million back. So what I'm saying is, those, I forget how many units are in the 5-building development site there on Front and Pine, but with 4 new incoming hotels within 300 yards of that site, do we need more short-term rentals downtown, and are they going to be as valuable as they could have been? Short-term rental hotels are a concern of mine, just because undesirable things are going to go on there. They're unmanaged. So the profits from the Front Street development increase with parking, whether they are long-term or short-term. So that's the thing. If those units on Front and Park right there, if they have parking, they're worth more, whether they're short-term rental or long-term rental. Is there a break-even point on where the value of those with parking as long-term rentals meets short-term rental without parking? So I guess that's kind of what I'm saying is that something that we can look at, making those deed restricted, not available for short-term
Yes.
rental?
Yes.
And I know that that is a private development, though.
But we
So-
own the
but-
land.
But when that RFP comes in, if they say, we'll take all these 5 buildings right here and we'll deed restrict them for long-term against short-term, the ability to short-term rent them, the amount of money we need on that $7 million property is considerably less.
It's not private property right now, it's ours, so we can say no short-term rentals, period.
No, I'm
wheeling and
not
dealing.
talking about the State Street side. I'm talking about the Front and Pine development that's going
Oh,
on
no,
right
we
there.
can't do that.
That's
That's private, yeah.
Okay. I understand that, but I thought that there might be an opportunity there for that. We'll do this if you do this.
If there was a pilot associated with that project,
We
that private
could.
project, then you could.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would hope to see public restrooms on the ground level. I would hope to see public parking with a revenue sharing agreement of some sort as a potential component of the parking fund refunding for the original property purchases. Is there a possible potential for the DDA to contribute funds as reimbursement to the city and parking funds originally purchased for the properties? There were North Shore, who presented this property as a development now, privately developed, they were partially promised parking with that parking garage. So is it a component of somebody to get DDA funds back as part of that? I don't know how to say that the right way, but it's something we're thinking about. Because they wouldn't have continued down this path knowing that parking deck wasn't going to happen as proposed. At the end of the day, I want to see tax dollars collected off these properties. That's worth more in the long run than the money from the parking enterprise fund getting returned right away. The sooner we sell this, the sooner we start collecting tax dollars on it, the better off we're going to be. And what are the long-term care, maintenance, and ownership implications when this potentially goes into private ownership and management? So,
That's a fair question.
because once it's gone, they could sell it. If we
Not-
sell it to somebody,
We have the opportunity to put deed restrictions on and other things that we can do to protect that. So
Okay.
that's a fair thing to say, that if we're going to, I guess that's a fair point to bring up really quick, and I'm going to look for some head nods. We all want workforce housing. That can slide depending on, certain pilots are only available for 15 years or 20 years. Some are available for up to 50. If the developer themselves is offering an 80% AMI, like they're going to be doing it, we can write in that they must have it for X amount of years. We have all that flexibility because it is our property, right? This isn't private property. It'll be one way, shape, or we might keep the land and lease it. We might sell it with a deed restriction, but we have those options, so Rob can kind of hear what we're saying right now and integrate that into it of, we're looking for some affordable housing with some guarantees behind it. If we want to keep it relatively open, that can leave people open to what creative numbers they might be looking at, but we can dictate that. So, Lance, go ahead with yours. You had your hand up.
Yeah, RFP, parking, attainable housing units, non-expiring permanent deed restrictions on the short-term rentals and on the property as a whole, where the units cannot be sold off as condos post-attainable housing pilot ending.
Cool. So really quickly too, just because this got brought up, I appreciate that, because I dashed all of those as we talked. The parking deck down there, we hear this a lot from the original proposal and others, is we were promised parking. There was discussions of it in the TIF extension. A parking deck down there actually exists right now in TIF 97. That's just not going to happen. And so that was part of the original TIF 97 plan that still sits in there. That was part of the discussions about the possible extension or renewal or whatever of TIF that was taken out. And so as of right now, that's still not happening. So I just want to clarify that there was no promise of parking that we owe anybody. That was part of plans that still had to go through other processes that didn't go through the other processes because there wasn't the support and or funds for them. And so I just wanted to clarify that as we have that conversation. I think we've gotten a lot of good consensus from what I've heard here, just so I can summarize and let me know if I'm missing anything or if anything pops up at anybody. RFP process, public parking included in some way, shape, or form, workforce housing, or affordable housing. We'll leave it open for whatever the bids might come in with, or the proposals might come in with. No short-term rentals, completely ban them. Public restrooms of some kind. I do want that clarified, though, because if it does end up being like, oh, well, there's going to be businesses on the first floor, we want to make sure that's clear from the get, that when they eventually go out and lease it out, that's going to be expected of whoever they're leasing it to, and so we don't get into, oh, the store opened and they're, a private salon and they don't let other people in or something. So just being very clear on that, because that was the consensus I heard here. And so those were the big, and then potentially interested in leasing the property versus owning it ourselves. That can definitely be part of any proposal, as well as other things that we might want to look at with deed restrictions. If somebody did want to buy the property, we'd want it to be very favorable to the city, making sure that all of these things were enshrined in it. Doesn't mean it would get picked, but if somebody says, I don't want to lease it from you, I want to buy it, that we'd want to make sure that these all were protected very, very long-term and that we retain. A question I do have for Lauren, as far as making these things whole, if we did the lease, that wouldn't cause, obviously, you just said that we wouldn't have to pay ourselves back then. But if we did some kind of a sale, but to get all of this stuff, nobody's going to be able to pay $7 million to us. Well, maybe they could, maybe we could ask for it. Not expecting it. Is there a way that we could say some of the revenue that comes in from that gets earmarked, or is that not allowed to happen through tax collection?
I'm not totally understanding
Well, like if we
the last
said.
part of your question, I'm
So
sorry.
whatever this, up to $7 million, a portion of the revenue collected from that property would go towards paying back the parking fund specifically? Or we can't do that with property individually?
You can allocate the funds if it were to be purchased back for the 7 million. That's what I was, or for any amount.
Not the purchase, I'm saying if the tax collected on the appreciated, as it gets built out, and people are paying, they
the
start paying
TIF?
taxes.
That would
Well,
make it a TIF.
TIF might not exist in 2 years, so I'm not
That
talking
would
about
make
TIF.
it a TIF, though, essentially.
Essentially, well, and that's what I'm asking, like, is it basically, can we do our own version of a TIF of this property, once it's developed, we'd capture up to, over the years until it hit $7 million, a certain portion of it? I'm guessing no from your look on your face.
No,
That's
I
okay.
just don't, I think the answer for, as I sit here, is I don't know.
Okay.
I'd have to sit down and kind of,
Can we just say we want a revenue sharing, a percentage of revenue shared with the parking? Is that what you're referring to?
No, it's not. It's something that can't happen, so we're gonna drop that.
Don't call
So-
it a TIF.
It's not a TIF.
I don't understand why you'd want to do that anyway.
Well, I'm
to
saying
build
that
another parking deck or something.
If we're looking to get $7 million back, but we want a bunch of workforce housing, as many units as possible, you can't buy the property for $7 million and put affordable units in it and make the numbers work. We've seen this time and time and time again. And so my thought was, can we look at it through some other way of collecting the money from the value on the property to
Tax collection.
through tax collection? And the answer is no. So we're moving on from
This
that.
this isn't just housing, though. The component of it is also the parking garage. There's going to be revenue generated off that parking garage. And that's, if you want to get revenue recaptured from the land value, there's a potential there for a percentage of, like, we need some of this money. Well,
Yeah.
if we retain ownership.
Well, and I was just gonna say that could be part of it, but as the person I was on the parking deck ad hoc 8 years ago. And for us having complete control of it and taking all the revenue, we were still gonna have trouble making the numbers work per spot with all of it coming to us. So even if we do some revenue sharing, we can get some money back. I'm not optimistic that the 7 million we'd be made whole on 7 million in any kind of realistic time span. But again, we're looking at trade-offs. Is that okay compared to getting some more workforce housing and things like that?
I think at the end of the day, the best case scenario for us is that we're gonna get money off the taxable value of the property, or whatever's built on that property.
Mhm.
That's gonna be that has the longest lasting and long-term implications.
And that's what we're weighing, so I appreciate that. And I appreciate Heather's suggestion. I really think that's a really great one, too. If somebody wants to lease it from us, then we don't lose the property or the money, and we get to see all of this stuff happen. But we got to see what people and what they create out there. But I think that's, that's another good way for us to work around it.
And maybe Rob could clarify this. With the RFP, it kind of presents all the options are available to us then, versus the RFQ.
Yes, yes. I mean, I think obviously we want to give some direction, given these goals, but yeah, there would be more options on the table for developers to propose that you can consider.
Rob, do you,
Question-
oh, go ahead.
A question I do have is with respect to deed restriction or requirement for workforce housing being there, is there a length of time? I don't know if that's something that's important, Rob, to specify. You said long-term. Is that 15 years? Is it 30 years? Is it in perpetuity?
I would my thought would be deed restrict around the length of a pilot legally allowed, right? So make sure that we look at that. But then deed restrict against STRs and against the sale, the individualized sale as condos. I think that's where a lot of our residents come into. We just look at a building over on Garfield Street that essentially had this, and they sold everything off as condos, and now they're all short-term rentals.
Right.
So that's what we want to. I think I would want to prevent.
Yes.
The longer the better. I know your Trailside 45 is what you're talking about.
Yeah, the only caveat on that is
They can be named.
Go ahead, Megan.
is that we're talking about these being rentals, and a rental is not an asset, and a condo is an asset.
We just can't. We wouldn't be able to restrict the sale price of a condo. I doubt that we
You'd
could
have to get into the
legally
rent
do that.
control business.
Yeah, and we don't
Which
wanna.
we can't,
Right.
There's a statute that.
Yeah,
So-
I have to say, I like your idea of tying it to a pilot because,
Yeah.
I'm thinking from the developer standpoint, you've got the incentive goes away, and then
Yeah.
you do have, and then once after that, it's a market rate apartment, which is an asset.
Right.
And could be sold as a full unit, not as individual units, but as an asset that
That's
the developer, the investor could sell at some point. So I think that's a good approach.
So, Rob, really quick, for where we're at in the discussion you've heard so far, do you feel like, you were talking kind of, people want some direction before they put a proposal out. Do you feel like what we've given you, you're envisioning, I can imagine exactly like the RFP, or not exactly, but the RFP I'm going to write now because I have enough information and get the gist, or do you need more from us right now?
No, this has been great. I like that you're all on the same page, and yeah, I think I have a great amount of direction to write it.
Can I just ask a quick clarifying question? Because I think it would be helpful, and anyone could find this on the website, but could we include the strategic action plan or a reference to the strategic action plan? Because I think in terms of keeping the goals of the developer aligned with what our goals are, other than these specific goals, just having that referenced in the RFP, I think would be extremely helpful.
I think referencing would be good. I don't want us to get into.
Right,
Yeah,
a link,
exactly.
right,
Yep.
that it's
That's-
there. It could be 2 sentences, that it's there, here's the link,
Yeah.
and then, for a smart developer, they would look at that and say, oh, someone did my homework for me, and this is my goals.
Look at the bells and whistles I
Right.
can add that meet all
Right.
of these. Yep. Okay. Anything else from the commission that you want to share with Rob? Okay. Feeling good about what we gave you?
Yes, thank you very much.
Fantastic. All right. And I'm going to call a quick 5-minute recess. I think there might be some people that need signatures. If you need them, we can do that right now, too. So if not, feel free to hang out, and we'll be back in 5 minutes.
I believe so, but that's the best question for Heidi. I'm not good for math questions, Jordan. Yeah.
she's wandered the
Yeah,
furthest.
I'm just worried
This one's
that we might get there a little late. But
We shall see.
ET at 8:15 in the morning.
God, how long?
Oh, just a few minutes.
All right, I'm going to call the meeting back to order. I know that people kind of wander in, but we can get the attainable housing facilities. Oh, no, Lauren, sorry.
Missing Heather.
We're going to, well, we're missing Lauren is the big thing.
Oh, yeah.
So I guess actually we'll get started in about a minute. Sorry to our camera operator out there. We'll wait one more minute. Staff, you guys are the worst about wandering.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Look up and you go, not yet, but they'll be like. And as we're
man, my mom.
doing that, we're going to have Lauren kick off our discussion about the attainable housing and, I forget what the other one's called right now.
Residential.
Thank you. Go
Yep.
right ahead.
I can never remember them either. So, this is we're picking up a discussion that we had previously about these housing tools. I want to acknowledge that Susan Lighthouser-Yee is here as well, in case you have questions from her. She's an expert in this field as well. And so really, at the last time the City Commission discussed these tools, the sort of consensus was, yeah, let's move forward with these. And so we're bringing these back to you with some requested actions that would move these forward. I realize there's a little bit of maybe sticker shock with how much it would cost to do the notices, because the statute requires certified mail. And so we have a map in the packet that shows the districts that were discussed at the Planning Commission, and they do overlap a little bit. If the City Commission wants to move forward as is, then we would ask you to confirm the districts, authorize the funds that it will take to send out the notices, just for that mailing, and then to set the public hearing and bring it back in that window that the statute sets for the public hearing after the notices have gone out. You can also look at this and say, that's a lot of notices to go out, that's gonna cost a lot of money, maybe we wanna scale it back or something like that. That's open to you as well, I just wanna let you know that. But this is where we left off, so this is where we're picking back up. And then what would happen is we'd bring the public hearing after the appropriate time when the notices went out for the resolutions to be adopted. You would have the public hearing, and then you could at the same meeting adopt the resolutions, and that would set the table for folks to use this tool. If somebody wanted to use the tool, they would still have to apply and come back. So it's not just opening up to these districts, anyone can just move ahead right away. There's still more process that would happen along the way after that, but this would set the stage for folks to be able, for this tool to be available for property owners to use.
Okay, so starting with questions, Mitch, Laura, and then Ken, and then, okay, guys.
I definitely see this is a lot of notices compared to a typical zoning process that, yes, you have to notice, but it might be noticing a couple dozen people, and
Right.
this is noticing a lot. And I do have a tweak I'm proposing that makes next to no difference, but that is removing the industrial districts, since the purpose is to be industrial in nature and thus is poorly suited for housing.
That's a fair. Okay, thank you for that. Mitch, Laura, you're next.
Lauren, can you remind me, it's been a few months since we discussed this in a study session. What was the benefit of looking at the whole city as a district? Is it because it gives us the most flexibility? Are there other benefits? And I'm just trying to weigh the cost benefit of the mailing with the flexibility and balancing that. And are there opportunities, if we started with a smaller district, could we then expand it later? Or is it your recommendation that we look at the whole district?
Okay, good questions. So I think that what the Planning Commission really looked at when they discussed the districts is the residential district for the, I always get them mixed up, the one that's for
Attainable.
and less,
Attainable, okay.
right? And then for the other one, some of the more intensive districts. So
Okay.
they correlated the the uses in the different districts to where it would be most appropriate.
Yeah, I saw that.
So that's really where that recommendation came from. The other part of the question is whether you could start smaller and scale it up. That's going to depend on whether the legislature extends the program. So if you start small now and they don't extend the program, probably you're going to be stuck with that district, which is fine. I mean, that's totally open to you. But there's,
But
right now, there's.
we would limit ourselves.
Yes.
So just kind of talk me through the timing. This could sunset in like September.
Right.
And if it sunsets in September, it's still available for use for another 10 years, 12 years?
I believe that's the case,
Okay.
but the districts would be set.
So if we
I-
do
and
the
I-
whole, if we did the whole district and it sunsets, we have more flexibility over a decade versus if we start with a small district and then it goes away, we would be stuck with just that. Okay.
I believe that's true, and Susan may know more than I do, but there was talk of extending the program, but I don't know where that's at.
I feel, we don't need to, I feel like while we're doing this,
That-
let's not get into too much prognosticating on whether we think
That
it'll go
helps
forward
me.
or not. Quick question though, and the same thing, once we've done this, if they extend it past September, we don't have to send the notice out ever again,
I
right?
don't believe so.
Okay, so this is a one-time, gives us the flexibility with the whole city.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Ken,
Thank you.
you're next.
Just real quick, we keep saying we. Once we establish this district, then we have 10, 12 years to utilize this. This is all the properties in the city now have access to this tool, so it is the owners who will have the ability.
That's
When we
correct.
say we mean the owners, because that's not, any development that spurs from this is owner-initiated.
Yes.
This is not the city changing things. We're allowing owners of properties to take on the opportunity to redevelop at a tax incentive for them.
Correct.
Yep.
But we're offering the tool and we have the control.
Correct.
Right, but that's, well, let's, we won't split the baby because you're
Okay.
both right.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
like
I'm
you're.
not arguing with it.
Yeah,
I'm just,
okay.
Yeah.
we say we, and I
Yeah.
just, I don't want to put fear into people's hearts because.
We're not making them.
The
That's
city
right.
is going to come through and
Yep.
up
Oh.
the zone again.
Oh, that's
That
important.
is-
That's
that is-
very important.
That's what
Yeah.
I'm trying to differentiate on
Yep.
this, is
Thank
that
you,
we're
Ken.
not, like, this, we're creating this district that allows residents to make investments in their
Yep.
properties.
Correct,
It's a
and without
choice.
the district, that opportunity would not be available
We
to
have to
them.
include everyone
Right.
because in September, this could potentially be over forever.
Right.
But if we get this done and everybody's in it starting now,
Yep.
if it sunsets, you still have 10 or 12 years, however the length of time was, to do this.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, the important thing to emphasize for people.
Yep.
Yep.
Absolutely. Good point.
You want to say, Susan?
Lance, you're next.
I think Commissioner Ken just took it right out of my mouth. So.
Sorry, man.
Right.
Yeah, no. that's
No,
good.
no, good. Consensus. All right, Heather, you're next.
Okay, well, I'm kind of a downer. I'm really not on board with the AHFA. That's the lower one, 1 to 4 residents. It has I really researched this thing, and it has a huge fiscal impact because of the taxes, 50%. It's a gigantic, it looks like a really gigantic burden on staff. I also think it has little effect on our lower income housing, 50 to 80% AMI, which is what we're really missing around here. And I think of all the policing that's going to have to go on. You have to police incomes every single year. You have to police the rents and the rehab investments. And ultimately, you could get a few really nice ADUs, and they will be renting at 120 AMI. And then our residents are going to look around and say, well, you just gave tax breaks to the rich. I think that we have a lot of other things that we could do, like starting an ADU plan library. I think it would cost half the amount of this $75,000 that you have to pay in mailing out notices. I think you could do a permit-free rebate. You could freeze property taxes for 5 to 7 years if you do, a rehab. That would reward actual investment, and I think it's much simpler for staff and for our taxes. I do, however, think that the RHF1, FA1, the one for the larger developments, could work because it's focused on where the market is really failing, and it would involve more professionals, and that would mean better documentation, so that's less staff time. It's, our fiscal exposure would also be more targeted because I think we'd have less, it's not this gigantic entire city. It would be more targeted to where our commercial districts and our corridors. It feels more like a real tool for housing production and less like a kind of time sink for our staff and a tax giveaway.
Jackie?
$75,000 for certified mail, I fear could pale in comparison to the hole in our property tax revenues that this has the potential to enact if we do this citywide immediately. I think we need a smaller scale test of concept. I think that it would ideally be happening in a place where we already have relatively modest housing costs and relatively large lot sizes, like Traverse Heights, for instance, to make that an incentive for backyard cottages. I am very concerned about administrative load on our staff, executed citywide. We don't know the financial consequences. We don't know the administrative costs. To enact this across the city is high risk, and I think that maybe it's the level of unknowns that have caused such a low uptake statewide. As I understand from the Planning Commission brief, there are only a handful of communities across the state of Michigan that have taken action and adopted this. So I am treating this with extreme caution just because we don't know what's going to happen, and I think it deserves to be tested on a small scale.
So before we get too much into a discussion here, two things. One, I think everybody had a chance to give some feedback. It sounds like, though there are some thoughts on the size, if we were to go forward, the size that's been identified seems to have the majority of support. And I'm not saying that because what I'm saying, that it has to be that. What I'm saying, though, is we can continue with questions or we need a motion. So,
Questions.
Yep, go ahead, Ken.
So, I'm comfortable with any size. I think it was a nice idea. I can go either way with this. I could go citywide, I could go neighborhood basis, but what I didn't ask earlier that I wanted to ask was, have we had a chance, is anything happening with the Neighborhood Association's President's Council? Have we had a chance to present this information to anybody, anywhere, and gotten any kind of feedback from the neighborhood associations?
And so the question, if we can get that answer, and also I think to the point that Jackie raised, I mean, you guys are bringing this back. Benjamin, you've been weighing everything. Looking at this, and I know you've mentioned for a couple items tonight, you're worried about staff capacity. Have you been looking at this and factoring this in as you think forward, or, do you have thoughts on that right now?
I don't have thoughts on it right now, because frankly, I need to know more about what the true implications are for the employee team, so I can't give you a good answer right now on that. As far as, there was the other question that we had an answer to. What was it?
The neighborhood?
Neighborhood council has not been involved in this. Like, they have not been approached and asked their thoughts on this issue.
I would just be curious to get some sort of feedback. I don't want to advance this to the point where we're going to vote on this and it's going to become the thing or official, and we have a lobby full of people who are like, we didn't know about this, we don't like this. So I mean, I do want some more community input and feedback on this, but I think it's a good idea, and I'm comfortable with doing it citywide or doing it on a small neighborhood association basis for people who can, we see some benefit in this, and this could help our area out.
Yes, thank you. And so one thing to point out to the question of how it's been rolled out, this is relatively new past legislation.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there was a presentation at it at the Housing Summit in October. Leelanau was, two places in Leelanau were looking at it. Frankfurt's been looking at it. So it was a matter of them, in their cases, what they're reporting is they had support. They were just figuring out the rules and how they wanted to do it. So I think that the lack of uptake is we're not reading a crystal ball, but this isn't as simple as a pilot where we have the prescribed rules, we go in and we know exactly how it's going to be implemented in every community. Every community has to figure out where it fits for them, which is what our discussion is right now. So I think what I would be looking for is, do we have some more tweaks to this? Do we want to ask for something to come back, or do we want to have a motion and start moving this forward? Is really where we're kind of at the matrix right now.
Can I ask two questions?
You can, yeah.
One is, what exactly do the notices say? Like, once we send out the notices, is that a commitment to we're doing this?
The notices are required in order to set the public hearing.
Okay, okay.
So at the public hearing, it's not, you're not locking yourself into a yes
Okay.
vote? Is that kind of
That's
answer the question?
exactly
Yes,
what my question was. So we're sending out a notice saying, we are going to do a public hearing, and then we can hear from people on this. And then my next question is, we still control the depth of how much gets done with this. So to Jackie's point about a concern of kind of just a slog of an overwhelming number of people that want to do this, at some point, can the city say, okay, we have enough? Or do we have to open it up to every single applicant that comes through and they meet a criteria and then they're approved?
Right. I think that is to be determined. That would be set up through, because the application process is set up by the city, and then.
But legally, like, so if we say we're going to take advantage of this tool, and then, just hypothetically, we're overwhelmed with the number of applications that we have, to the point that it's impacting staff capacity, it's impacting our property tax capture, and we just say, oh my, we didn't expect this. Can we then say, we're going to take a pause?
I'm going to have to
We
get
can
back to you
opt
on
out.
that.
The other question I would have while you're checking that is, is there the opt-out option? And we have a rubric right now as a city for pilots, right? We expect them to get a certain score. Could we do that on this as well?
I think so. I think that's the application process that is required in the statute, that it comes back to you with applications.
So I think, so what we know so far is, I think Mitch's suggestion, I want to lose it, to exclude anything industrial, unless anybody disagrees with that, no matter how, if we move forward. And when you guys bring back numbers or answers to questions, we can exclude the industrial. Again, this is where I think the weight would be, if we do this motion, it is to hold a public hearing and send notice. It is not inherently telling us that we're going to do it. It would be a notice delivered to everyone in the affected areas, and right now, it sounds like, other than industrial, the support that's there seems to be for citywide and different, you looking at the different criteria, so not everybody's getting one for every single thing. They're getting ones that apply to their district or their area. And then we would have further action taken at that point if it was decided by the body. So I want to be clear on that. If somebody makes the motion, we vote on it tonight, we are not saying this program goes into effect and we're starting an ad hoc and creating a pilot or a rubric for the pilot program. We're saying we're going to hold a public hearing.
In this particular motion, just so you know, because it's a little unusual, would require 5 votes to pass.
Because it is a
Because
spending.
of the cost
Yeah.
item.
So that is where we are at right now. Go ahead, Heather.
But if I don't agree that the AHFA, the 1 to 4 dwellings, is sustainable for staff or fiscally responsible, then I can't vote, I can't support this, correct?
But you could make a motion just on you could split the motion.
You could split it,
If
yeah.
you would like.
One for the AHFA and one for the RHFA.
Yes.
Yep.
If that were the case, I would just say, I don't know the breakout on the notices for the cost, so you just want to say, like, not to exceed or something like that,
Yeah, I mean, if both, well, yeah.
something.
So I have a question. I've talked to probably no less than 100 people about this, if not maybe more like 1,000 people throughout the campaign, and I've written about it fairly extensively as well, specifically around the Attainable Housing Facilities Act. We do have the opportunity to change the actual numbers in there, right? We don't have to say it's 120% AMI. We could actually say it's 80% AMI as a commission.
Right.
So we can limit the scope, and it's really not focused I'll get to a question because we have to ask questions, right?
Well, we're
It's
clarifying,
it's really not, it's not focused, from my understanding, and maybe the professionals can tell me if I'm wrong, but it's not focused on creating more units, so not just like building more ADUs and making those pencils, but rather taking the existing housing stock that we have in the city and then converting this. Personally, to me, I see it as a way for us to give the city a carrot to get rid of short-term rentals or lessen short-term rentals and make that short-term rental owner say, oh, this pencils, right? I could do this. I can rent it to a teacher or somebody who is making, I don't know, whatever we set that at, 120% AMI or less, and instead of doing a short-term rental. And I think that the broadness of the scope was centered around just being fair to everybody in the city with the short, very tiny timeline that we have, and knowing how we all take sometimes a few meetings to make decisions. And so that was what I saw. I guess my question would be, maybe to the whole commission too, like, do we want to wait till the next meeting until we have these questions answered, and just table it until the next meeting, and then you could give us some more answers to those questions that have been responded?
Yeah, we won't do an official table because that's a whole Robert's Rules thing.
Oh, okay.
But we will, I think we could say we'd like to refer. Yep, defer this to the next business.
Sorry, Ben.
Yep, it's referred to the next business meeting. So with that in mind, do we have other questions we would like to have answered at the next one? Go ahead, Heather.
Yeah, it's a follow-up on Lance's question. It's how do you justify the amount of staff time it would take to, basically it's policing. The investments, you know, what you bought for that $5,000, keeping track of the incomes and that the rents are corresponding. So, the
Yeah,
question.
so I guess that would be, Benjamin, when we bring it back.
Is
we
there
get
a
an idea of
cap,
what staff time
you
would
know?
look
Do we
like.
put a cap in so we don't overwhelm everyone?
Is there another community that we could call and ask, like, does this require a whole person to do this? Is it?
Let's just say we're gonna ask Benjamin to look at potential staff time commitments and bring that back to us. Jackie, do you have a question?
I had a follow-up to Lance's comment, that while the idea of incentivizing conversion of short-term rentals to long-term rentals is near and dear to my heart, we simply don't know. The last time we made a citywide decision to upgrade our density and zoning, for instance, in the 2 years since we took that action in 2023, there are only 15 building permits that have been pulled against that increased density zoning. We don't even know if or how many actual structures have been completed. So to my point is, we don't know. We don't know enough to know what we're getting into. We don't know where the pitfalls are. We don't know the costs. We don't know the benefits. And I think a small-scale test would allow us to answer a lot of those burning questions before we adopt a citywide policy.
We're already bringing this back for the next meeting, so that'll be part of our discussion with some of those answers, the ones we could possibly know. Some things we just don't know. So anything else that we'd like them to have, information that we'd like to have for our discussion when it comes back at the next business meeting?
How long are we establishing the tax forgoance period? It's not complete tax forgoance, it's just kind of like it's
like a
an
pilot.
abatement. How long is the tax abatement period going to be for?
They're short. They're no more than 12 years.
But we have the ability to set it. Or, so
Right.
we can decide how long it's going to go for,
And what percentage, too, of AMI?
80% AMI.
to target for
8
these.
years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions that we'd like answered before our next meeting? And you can always email staff if you think of others, but while we're having this discussion.
And hey, if we're sending out thousands
No.
of notices, we'll probably get some feedback.
Yeah.
Well, that's only if we are not voting right now, we're not voting on anything. If we vote at the next meeting, we are just voting about holding a public hearing, so that would be part of the intended consequences, is we would get more engagement from from Ken, go ahead.
We are tabling this to when?
Till next business meeting,
The next
which is
business
the
meeting, so
third or second
we're looking at
Thursday.
March 2nd.
Thank you.
Like, I hope that the word can get out and we can get some feedback from particular neighborhoods who would like to opt in or opt out. So
Well, I'm going to reiterate again, though, that when this comes back, it's still going to be that we'd be voting to have a public hearing. So we'd be voting to have a more public discussion, too. So I don't want people to think that if they don't show up on the 2nd, that they'll have no other chance to express
Absolutely,
themselves
absolutely,
or
yeah.
have any voice in this, so. Okay, so do we feel like we have enough to bring this back? Great,
yeah.
thank you, everyone. And again, if you think of anything else, email staff, and they'll look that up as well. Okay, so for our new business is the agreement for water generative power, so please go ahead.
Yes, I'm going to invite Art Krieger, our Director of Municipal Utilities, to give a super brief, like about 2-minute overview. He knows we've got a big closed session we're going into. So Art, if you could give the very high-level executive summary, that would be great. Thank you.
Great, no problem. Good evening, everyone. Art Krieger, Director of Utilities with the city. This program is like an emergency incentive program to help the local power grid in an event of a potential brownout condition. In our area in the past, we haven't really seen anything like this. We've heard about them in other states. But times are changing. There's more demand for electric out there in the grid. So we want to be helpful in a way we can. So we were approached by this company named Voltus, and they offered an incentive program to be available upon notice to turn on generators that are at the water treatment plant and the wastewater treatment plant. They're sizable enough to help relieve the grid of some power. We could be self-powering at those plants during a 4-hour period, possibly up to 4 hours upon their request. And they would pay us a significant amount of to be on their program, about $57,500 per year. It's a 6-year contract that we're looking to sign, and we would receive that amount annually. I don't know if there's any questions I can help answer.
Go ahead,
Yes.
Ken.
Just a couple quick ones. Did you reach out to Voltus to become part of this program, or did they reach out to us?
They contacted us initially. I had not heard of them. I confirmed with Traverse City Light and Power that they were already working with them for this kind of a program, so yes.
Have we heard it from any other municipalities who are already participating in this program and their thoughts, feelings, and what they've experienced with it?
I haven't heard of any other programs, other communities joining a program like this. I think it's kind of a newer type program.
Has the city attorney had a chance to look over any of the fine print of this agreement? That, oh, she's gone.
She talked about that in agenda review, though.
She has looked it over.
Yep.
I think she had a few minor comments on the contract language that she was looking to have changed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about this, but it almost sounds too good to be true. It
I
sounds
know.
like free money. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
I agree. It did sound too good to be true, so I did investigate it quite thoroughly before I brought it forward. But yeah,
Was it 50,000 for each generator or both combined?
I believe they went by per megawatt. They were paying $50,000 per megawatt, and we're like 1.15 between.
So combined.
So,
Combined.
okay, it's combined.
Sorry.
And we're like, to how this is going to work, they're going to say, we want you to run to see how much you'll reduce the impact on the grid. We're going to power our own infrastructure. We're not backfeeding them for support other places. This is for us to, we're just going to run our own facilities with that generator during these periods of time.
Yes, that's how I understand it. We'd be self-sufficient, and that would allow more power to be used outside the city facilities for the grid.
Are both the generators at both facilities natural gas powered, or are they?
They're actually diesel.
So
natural gas, from what I understand, has a tough time creating the amount of demand that we need at both of these plants. So diesel is a better fuel.
I'd wondered
to-
about,
to
yeah,
run
'cause-
those, yeah. You can get more generation of power out of a diesel generator.
do we look at like the cost of how much it will be to run those during those periods of time where we need them?
It's basically fuel, and O&M is done routinely throughout the year, operation maintenance procedures. So I don't have a number for you, but I don't think it would be much. And we do run them to test them
Monthly.
quite regularly, yes, monthly.
Ben, did you want to re-ask your legal question, or were you happy with?
Oh,
I'm sorry. Okay.
I guess I can't remember us talking about it.
Sorry,
in the
we
le-
talked
in the
about right
legal-
after,
In the
sorry.
legal review, but it was, I just wondered if our city attorney had a chance to review this contract agreement and if there were any fine print issues that she was concerned about or anything that made us not want to move forward with this.
No, not at all. I mean, anything that was in there that I might have noticed, I have confidence that we can work out with the provider.
That's all I got.
So this is kind of responding to former Commissioner Tim Werner's very upset email, where he was like, why isn't staff figuring out how to replace generators, battery backup? So my research says that we have to have emergency power under state and federal law, and that there is no scenario today, please correct me if I'm wrong, where batteries alone are considered sufficient for multi-hour mission critical wastewater operations, and that the solar project at the wastewater treatment plant, even with batteries, can't replace the emergency generators yet.
That's exactly
right?
right.
Yep.
We actually talked about that this afternoon, Mr. Krieger
Okay.
and I.
So my
Yes.
question is, as a kind of consolation prize, can we earmark the revenue, the $57,000 a year, and put it towards a battery pathway?
I think that's something we can absolutely discuss, and I'm going to ask you to remember that we need to discuss that.
Yep. Yeah, because I think that would, good idea. You know, that supports our
Sounds like an
electrification
OKR.
policy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, our OKRs or the electrification policy for that in general, right? Yeah, great. All right, do we have more questions, or do we want to do a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
I move to approve entering into a contract with Voltus and complete the related necessary forms to receive payment of up to $57,500 or more per year for enrolling in this 72-month term program.
That's actually, sorry to interrupt, but that's the piece out of Art's memo. If you can read the motion that's in mine up above, it's on page 2 of that bundle.
I see.
Oh, yeah,
I see.
the motion's all good.
All right, redact everything I just said. Motion that the mayor and the city clerk be authorized to execute a 6-year agreement with Voltus for the Emergency Generation Demand Response Incentive Program, resulting in, there we go, I like this better, in projected annual revenue to the city of $57,500 each year, with such contract subject to approval as to its substance by the city manager and its form by the city attorney.
Second.
Give that to you. Okay, any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, any public comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Art.
Thanks, Art.
Money for nothing. All right. Benjamin, did you want to take on the next one?
Yeah, so the next item is consideration of approving the evaluation process for the city manager and city attorney for the next this calendar year and next calendar year. And Commissioner Anderson made some good suggestions, I think, to consider. And so my recommendation is to not to essentially remove this item from tonight's agenda and discuss those at the end of our study session next Monday, with commission to approve the process on March 2nd based on how that discussion goes. And so that's
So
my
moved.
request. Great.
Well, we don't have to move, we're just going to refer it.
As long as there's no
We're going to
objection.
refer it again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Okay.
Then we'll cover that on Monday night.
Great. Okay, so moving
That's
on.
not expected to interrupt the process.
It'll be at the end.
We'll still be able to complete it in time.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so moving on to our last item of business here. The closed session for attorney-client privilege. Do we have a motion for that, please?
I can make that. Oh,
Oh, go ahead. You
Okay.
go ahead.
I move that the city commission enter into closed session immediately following the public comment portion of the agenda to discuss an attorney-client communication as authorized by MCL 15.268H.
Second.
Okay,
And there will not be any action when you emerge from closed session.
thank you. I was going to double check on that. Okay, roll call, please. Remembered.
Yeah. Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Ness?
Yes.
Commissioner Treadwell?
Yes.
Commissioner Funk?
Yes.
Commissioner Bomer?
Yes.
Commissioner Shaw?
Yes?
Mayor?
Yes. Okay. We'll move into closed session after the general public comment at the end of the meeting here. Okay, and do we have any reports from our commissioners from any of their bodies? Seeing none. Okay. All right, now this is the opportunity for any general public comment. Could be about anything tonight or anything in general. We appreciate you hanging out with us this late to just watch the process. All right, well then with that, we will close the general public comment and we'll go into closed session. Again, we do not anticipate action at the end, so we'll just come back and adjourn. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
I can type.
I'm an end of the road guy. I'm like, I'll ride it out. If you could be here, I could be here.
Yep.
Sure. Yep. I'm a little hungry. So we'll try not to. Okay, good.
Yeah,
You just need to stand here.
The cottage will need to
Perfect.
meet HIPAA standards.
I'm adjourning the meeting for February 17th.
Meeting adjourned.
Yes, and then I have to work. I didn't bring one.